Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of history's most romanticized spaces, the medieval royal court kitchen, and I'm here to completely shatter that fantasy for you. Picture this, you're standing in a stone chamber the size of a small aircraft hangar. But instead of planes, it's packed with open fire pits belching smoke thick enough to choke on. The heat hits you like a physical wall even though it's barely past 3 a.m. And somewhere in the darkness, someone's already screaming about burnt bread. The air tastes like a mixture of wood smoke, rancid meat fat, and your own fierce sweat. Welcome to your new job. You probably won't make it to lunch. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'm always curious, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Are you winding down after a long Monday in Tokyo? Fighting off Tuesday afternoon drowsiness in Sao Paulo? Let me know down below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first day in a medieval royal court kitchen doesn't begin with an orientation or a friendly tour. It begins in absolute darkness. In a corner of the servant quarters where you've been sleeping on a pile of straw that you're pretty sure used to belong to the stable horses. The straw pokes through your thin wool tunic, and you've just managed to fall into something resembling actual sleep when a rough hand shakes your shoulder. Hard. Up. Now. Fires won't light themselves. You pry your eyes open to see nothing. Literally nothing. It's so dark you could be floating in a void, except for the very real sensation of cold stone beneath you and the very insistent pressure of that hand still gripping your shoulder. The voice belongs to someone you'll later learn. He's the third assistant to the head saucier, which means he outranks you by approximately 1,000,000 rungs on the kitchen ladder, and he's already walking away. You hear his footsteps receding into the blackness, and you realize with mounting horror that you're expected to follow him through a medieval castle you've never seen before, in the pitch dark, to a kitchen you've never entered. You stumble to your feet, your muscles screaming from yesterday's 18-hour marathon of hauling water and scrubbing pots. Your hands, soft from whatever life you led before this, are already a disaster of blisters and cuts. You feel your way along the wall, following the sound of other shuffling bodies, the other low-ranking kitchen servants, the scullions and turnspits and general dogs' bodies who form the bottom tier of this culinary hell. The castle is freezing. It's always freezing in these stone fortresses, except for the kitchen, which operates at the opposite extreme. You're about to experience both ends of this temperature spectrum in the most unpleasant way possible. Your breath comes out in visible puffs as you shuffle through corridors, and you're wearing basically every piece of clothing you own, which amounts to one wool tunic, one pair of hose with holes in questionable places, and shoes that are more concept than actual footwear. Then you smell it. Wood smoke, which means you're getting close. The kitchen reveals itself gradually as you round a final corner. First, you see the glow of faint orange light that flickers and dances against stone walls. Then the heat reaches you, and it's like walking toward the open door of a blast furnace. Then you see the space itself, and your stomach drops. This isn't a kitchen. This is an industrial complex disguised as a cooking area. The main room stretches out before you, a cavernous hall with a vaulted ceiling that disappears into shadows even now, with the fires already burning. Multiple fireplaces line the walls, not cute little hearths, but massive openings in the stone, each one large enough to roast an entire ox, which, you'll soon learn, is exactly what they're used for. You're immediately shoved toward the nearest fireplace by someone whose face you can't quite make out in the dancing shadows. Start stoking. They grunt, and you realize you have no idea what that means. You've seen fires before, obviously, but this is different. These aren't campfires or cozy hearth fires. These are industrial-scale infernos that need to be hot enough to roast meat, boil massive cauldrons of water, and maintain that temperature for the next 20 hours straight. You grab what looks like a pakara long iron rod with a hook on the end and start jabbing at the logs. Immediately, sparks fly up and you jump back, nearly tripping over a bucket behind you. Someone laughs, a sharp bark of amusement in the darkness. You're already the entertainment. Not like that, you donkey, a voice says, and someone you'll later learn she's one of the undercooks, which means she's important enough to yell at you but not important enough to avoid the actual fire duty. Demonstrates the proper technique. It's all about airflow. Apparently, you need to arrange the logs so air can circulate, feeding the flames, building the heat gradually so the wood doesn't just flash and die. It's a science you've never considered, and you're expected to master it immediately, in the dark, while half asleep. Your eyes are already watering from the smoke. This is another thing nobody tells you about medieval kitchens. The ventilation is a nightmare. Yes, there are chimneys, but they're primitive, inefficient, and frequently clogged with soot and bird nests. At least half the smoke from these fires ends up billowing back into the room, creating a permanent haze that makes your lungs burn and your eyes stream. By the end of your first week, you'll have a persistent cough. By the end of your first month, you'll forget what it's like to take a breath that doesn't taste like smoke. As you work the fire badly, but with increasing competence born of desperation, the kitchen starts to come alive around you. More servants stumble in from the sleeping quarters. Voices rise in the darkness, some cracking orders, others mumbling prayers to various saints who probably have better things to do than protect kitchen workers. Someone drops something metal that clangs against stone with a sound that could wake the dead. Someone else curses extensively and creatively in what you think might be French. The head cook arrives like a minor deity making an entrance. You don't see him at first. You're too focused on not setting yourself on fire, but you feel the shift in the room's energy. The chatter dies down. People stand straighter. The head cook in a royal court kitchen is a person of genuine power. Someone who reports directly to the chamberlain or even the monarch themselves. This is a person who can have you beaten for incompetence or exiled for suspected theft. This is a person you will fear more than you fear God. His voice cuts through the smoke and darkness. The king wants venison for the midday meal. Fresh kill. Brought in last night. We have 4 hours. 4 hours to process, prepare, and cook venison for a royal meal, starting from a raw carcass. You don't know it yet, but this is actually generous timing. Sometimes you'll get 2 hours. Sometimes you'll get 1. Sometimes the king will change his mind after you've already prepared something else, and you'll have to start over while the first dish goes to the servant's tableaf. You're luckier straight to the pigs if you're not. The fire you've been tending is finally hot enough, which you learn when someone shoves you aside and starts hanging massive iron cauldrons on hooks suspended above the flames. These aren't delicate little pots. These are industrial vessels, some large enough that you could climb inside the mand. You will. Eventually, when it's time to scrub them clean, they're blackened with years of use, crusted with residue that never quite comes off no matter how much you scrub. Water detail comes next. This is where you learn one of the fundamental truths of medieval kitchen work. Everything requires water, And getting water is backbreaking labor. The well is outside, across a courtyard, down a set of stairs, through another courtyard, and then you have to actually haul the water back. In buckets. Wooden buckets that weigh almost nothing when empty and approximately 1 million pounds when full. And you'll make this trip dozens of times per day. You join the water China line of servants passing buckets from hand to hand, a human conveyor belt stretching from the well to the kitchen. Your shoulders are already burning by the 3rd bucket. By the 10th, you're pretty sure your arms are going to fall off. By the 20th, you've entered a state beyond pain, a sort of numb acceptance that this is your life now. Back in the kitchen proper, the organized chaos is building. The venison carcass has arrived, carried by 2 burly men who drop it onto a massive wooden table with a wet thud that makes your stomach turn. You've never seen an animal this size up close, and you definitely haven't seen one dead and ready for butchering. The smell hits you, that sweet, sick scent of raw meat mixed with the musk of the animal and something else you can't quite identify. A butcher appears, not a kitchen servant, but a specialist who travels between noble houses and starts his work. The knife he uses is larger than your forearm, and he wields it with a casualness that's genuinely frightening. Thunk. A leg joint separated. Thunk. The other leg. The carcass comes apart under his hands like a complicated puzzle being disassembled, each piece tossed to waiting servants who carry them to different stations. You're assigned to the spit. Of course you are. It's the job they give to the newest, lowest-ranking servants, the ones who are most expendable. The spit is exactly what it sounds like, a long iron rod that will be threaded through the meat and suspended over the fire, where it will slowly rotate for hours, cooking the venison evenly on all sides. Your job is simple in concept. Nightmare in execution. You will turn that spit by hand for hours, continuously, without stopping. They show you the technique. You sit. No, that's generous. You crouch in a low stool positioned dangerously close to the fire. The heat is already intense enough that you can feel your skin prickling, the hair on your arms singed. The spit is mounted on a rack with a handle, and you're expected to turn it at a steady, even pace, not too fast, or the outside will burn while the inside stays raw. Not too slow, or one side will char while the other barely cooks. Just right, for 4 hours straight. Historians still argue whether the spit turning was really as brutal as the records suggest, or if medieval people were just more accustomed to this kind of physical labor. Spoiler alert, it was definitely that brutal, and being accustomed to hard labor doesn't make it pleasant, just survivable. You begin turning. The motion is awkward at first, your wrist bending at an unnatural angle, your shoulder protesting the repetitive movement. The heat is incredible. Sweat immediately begins pouring down your face, stinging your eyes, soaking through your tunic. You're simultaneously roasting on the side facing the fire and freezing on the side facing away from it, creating a temperature differential across your body that feels genuinely unhealthy. 5 minutes in, your wrist starts to ache. 10 minutes in, the ache becomes pain. 20 minutes in, you're pretty sure you're causing permanent damage to your joints, and you have 3 hours and 40 minutes to go. The kitchen around you has descended into controlled madness. Servants rush back and forth carrying ingredients, tools, dishes. Someone's kneading bread dough on a table that's probably been in use since the castle was built. You can see the worn grooves where thousands of loaves have been shaped. Someone else is plucking a bird, feathers flying everywhere. settling into the permanent layer of grime and grease that coats every surface. Another servant is grinding spices in a mortar, the rhythmic thud of pestle against stone adding to the symphony of kitchen sounds. The noise is overwhelming. Crackling fires, clanging pots, shouted orders, the thunk of knives against cutting boards, the splash of water, the sizzle of fat hitting hot metal. It's like being inside a percussion instrument being played by someone with anger issues. And the smells. Oh, the smells. You're getting hit with a combination of scents that would make a perfumer weep. Roasting meat, burnt wood, raw onions, stale ale, unwashed bodies, something that might be cinnamon, something else that's definitely spoiled fish, smoke, more smoke, and underneath it all, the permanent dampstone smell of the castle itself. Your mind starts to wander as you turn the spit, which is dangerous because the moment you lose focus, your rhythm gets disrupted and someone notices and yells at you, but you can't help it. You start calculating how long you'll have to do this job. If you're very, very lucky, maybe a few months before you can move up to something slightly less hellish, like perpetual pot washing or permanent vegetable chopping duty. If you're unlucky, if you make a mistake, if you offend the wrong person, if you're just not physically capable, you might be stuck on spit duty indefinitely. Or you might be out entirely, cast from the castle to figure out how to survive with no references, no prospects, and a set of blisters that make it hard to hold anything. The venison fat starts to drip. This is the moment you've been warned about but didn't fully understand. The fat drips down into the fire, and the fire responds by flaring up, sending a blast of heat and sparks directly at your face. You flinch back, nearly losing your grip on the spit handle, and someone barks at you to hold steady. The fat keeps dripping. The fire keeps flaring. You keep turning, your face feeling like it's being sunburned from the inside out. Time becomes meaningless. You exist in a state of perpetual present, trapped in the mechanical motion of turning. Turning, turning. Your world narrows to the immediate sensations. Heat, pain, exhaustion, the weight of the spit handle in your blistered hands, the smell of cooking meat that would be appetizing if you weren't living through this ordeal. Somewhere in the third hour, you enter a sort of trance state. Your body keeps performing the motion while your mind detaches, floating somewhere up near the smoke-stained ceiling. You watch yourself from a distance, a figure hunched near a fire, turning a spit like some kind of human automaton. You wonder how you got here. You wonder if you'll survive. You wonder if survival is even the goal anymore, or if you've entered some kind of purgatory where you'll turn the spit for eternity. A voice jolts you back. Faster. The fat's not rendering properly. You increase your pace, your muscles screaming in protest. The faster turning sends your wrist into spasms, but you don't dare slow down. Being slow is worse than being in pain. Being slow gets you replaced, and being replaced means you've failed at the easiest, most basic job in the kitchen, which means you're useless. The final hour is a blur of pain and heat and motion. Your vision narrows to a tunnel focused on the rotating meat. You're not even seeing it anymore. Not real just maintaining the rhythm, keeping the motion constant, surviving from one moment to the next. And then, finally, someone says, "It's done." You stop turning. Your hand literally can't let go of the spit handle. Your fingers have cramped into a claw shape, locked around the iron. Someone has to pry your fingers open, one by one, And the pain of that is somehow worse than the pain of the turning. Blood rushes back into your cramped hand and you nearly pass out from the sensation. The venison is lifted from the spit and carried away to be carved and plated. You'll never taste it. The royal family and their guests will eat this meat that you've spent 4 hours of your life cooking, and you'll be lucky to get the scraps that are too small or too burned to serve. That's if there are any scraps. Often, there aren't. But your day isn't over. It's not even close to over. It's barely 10 a.m., and the kitchen is already preparing for the evening meal. You're pulled from your stool you literally can't stand on your own. Someone has to haul you pan-assigned to pot washing duty. The pot washing station is exactly as glamorous as it sounds. You're given a bucket of cold water because hot water is reserved for cooking, not cleaning, and a handful of sand, which is apparently your scrubbing agent. The pots are enormous, caked with burned-on food, and your hands, already destroyed from the spit turning, are about to get so much worse. You scrub, and scrub, and scrub. The sand cuts into your blisters, opening fresh wounds. The cold water makes your hands go numb, which is almost a blessing, except that you need to feel what you're doing to know if you're actually getting the pots clean. Someone inspects your work, runs their finger along the inside of a pot, and throws it back at you. Again. You scrub again. This time it passes inspection. Barely. You move to the next pot. Then the next. Then the next. There's a pile of dirty pots that seems to grow rather than shrink, as if they're reproducing when you're not looking. Maybe they are. Stranger things have happened in this kitchen. Somewhere around midday, you're given a break. And by break, I mean you're allowed to sit on the floor in a corner and eat whatever's available. Today, it's bread. Not the fine white bread that the nobles eat, but the coarse, dark bread made from whatever grain was cheapest. It's tough enough to use as a weapon, and you have to soak it in ale to make it chewable. The ale is weak and slightly sour, but it's wet, and you're so dehydrated from the heat that you drink pretty much anything. You eat in silence, too exhausted to talk, surrounded by other servants who are equally destroyed. Someone near you is crying quietly, tears cutting tracks through the soot and grime on their face. Someone else is examining an injuria burn. By the looks of it, blistered and angry. Nobody offers help. Everyone's dealing with their own damage. The break lasts maybe 15 minutes. Then you're back to work. The evening meal preparations are ramping up, and you're assigned to vegetable duty. Turnips, mostly. Mountains of turnips that need to be peeled and chopped. The knife you're given is barely sharp, which means you have to apply pressure, which means when it slips, and it will slip, you're going to bleed. 5 minutes into vegetable prep, you cut yourself. It's not a deep cut, just a slice across your thumb, but it bleeds enthusiastically, dripping onto the turnips. You wrap it in a scrap of fabric someone tosses at you and keep working, because stopping isn't an option. The fabric is probably dirty. You'll probably get an infection. This is just part of the job. As the day wears on, you start to understand the true horror of the medieval court kitchen. It's not just the work, though the work is brutal. It's not just the heat or the smoke or the danger, though those are all very real. It's the relentlessness of it. It's the knowledge that tomorrow will be exactly like today, and the day after that, and the day after that. It's the understanding that you are, in the eyes of this institution, fundamentally disposable. You are a tool that turns spits and washes pots and chops vegetables, and when you break because you will break, someone else will take your place. The day finally ends around 11 p.m. You've been working for 20 hours straight, with one 15-minute break. Your body is a catalog of pain. Blistered hands, burned arms, cramped muscles, an aching back, and feet that feel like someone's driven nails through them. You stumble back to your pile of straw, barely conscious, and collapse. In 5 hours, someone will shake you awake, and it will start all over again. Welcome to the medieval royal court kitchen. Your survival is optional, but your service is mandatory. You wake up, if you can call it Thado, the same rough hand, the same darkness, the same crushing realization that yesterday wasn't a nightmare but your new reality. Your body feels like it's been beaten with hammers. Every muscle protests as you move, your blistered hands screaming as you push yourself up from the straw. You can't straighten your fingers properly. The burn on your forearm from yesterday's fire has developed a blister the size of a coin, and your thumb, where you sliced it during turnip duty, throbs with each heartbeat. You're pretty sure it's infected. You're absolutely sure nobody cares. But here's the thing about the medieval court kitchen that you're about to learn in the most painful way possible. The physical labor is only half the battle. The other half is navigating a social hierarchy so complex, so rigid, and so brutally enforced that one wrong move can destroy you faster than any fire or knife. You shuffle into the kitchen behind the other low-ranking servants. And this morning, with slightly more consciousness than yesterday, you actually start to see the structure of this place. It's not just chaos, it's highly organized chaos. A pyramid of power with you firmly planted at the bottom, and the weight of everyone above you pressing down like stones. At the very top, barely visible to someone like you, is the head cook. He's already here, standing near the largest fireplace, his arms crossed, surveying his domain like a general observing his troops. This man has cooked for kings. Literally, he's traveled with the court, prepared feasts for visiting dignitaries, created dishes that have been praised in 3 languages. His knowledge of spices, cooking times, and flavor combinations is encyclopedic. His temper is legendary. His willingness to tolerate incompetence is non-existent. Below him, but still firmly in the realm of people who matter, are the master cooks. There are 3 of them in this kitchen, each responsible for a different aspect of meal preparation. One handles the roasts and other meat dishes. Another manages the sauces and gravies. The third oversees the baked goods and subtleties, those elaborate decorative food sculptures that the nobles love. These master cooks wear relatively clean aprons, and they carry themselves with an authority that makes you instinctively shrink back when they pass. Then come the undercooks. There are maybe a dozen of them, each one a specialist in their own right. There's the pastry undercook, the sauce undercook, the roasting undercook. They've each spent years learning their craft, working their way up from positions not too far from where you are now. They're skilled, they're respected within limits, and they're absolutely ruthless to anyone below them because they remember what it was like down there, and they'll do anything to avoid going back. Below the undercooks are the regular cook's journeymen who handle the day-to-day preparation work. They're competent without being exceptional, necessary without being irreplaceable. They chop, they stir, they baste, they follow orders from above and give orders to those below. They occupy a strange middle ground, important enough to have some security but not important enough to relax. And then there's everyone else. The scullions, the turnspits, the potboys, the general kitchen servants. You, the expendables, The ones who do the work that destroys bodies and breaks spirits. The ones who can be replaced within a day because there's always someone more desperate waiting outside the castle gates. But wait, it gets more complicated. Because within each tier, there are sub-hierarchies based on seniority, skill, favor, and a dozen other factors that shift like sand. The first assistant to the head saucier outranks the second assistant, obviously, but he also outranks the third assistant pastry cook. Except on Fridays when the pastry cook is preparing the special desserts for the bishop's visit, at which point the power dynamic temporarily reverses. Got it? No? Neither does anyone else. Which is why people get beaten for accidentally handing a spoon to the wrong person. This morning, you're learning the protocols the hard way. You're carrying a bucket of water. Your permanent job, apparently, is to be a human water fountain when you cross paths with one of the undercooks. You don't move out of the way fast enough. Not because you're being disrespectful, but because you're exhausted, carrying a heavy bucket, and your reaction time is that of a concussed sloth. The undercook stops, looks at you, and in that moment, you understand that you've committed a grave error in kitchen politics. You think you're too important to step aside? His voice is quiet, which somehow makes it worse than if he were shouting. No, sir. Did I ask you to speak? No, sir. Put down the bucket. You put down the bucket, water sloshing over the sides. Your hands are shaking. Around you, other servants have stopped working to watch. This is entertainment. This is also education theory, all learning what happens when you forget your place. Now pick it up and carry it around the kitchen 3 times. Over your head. The bucket, when full, weighs about 40 pounds. Over your head. 3 circuits of a kitchen that's roughly the size of a tennis court. With everyone watching, you hoist the bucket over your head, your arms immediately trembling with the effort. Water sloshes down onto your face, into your eyes, soaking your hair. You start walking. Your shoulders burn. Your arms feel like they're being pulled from their sockets. Water continues to pour down onto you, and you're dimly aware that you're creating a trail of puddles across the kitchen floor, which someone will have to clean up later. Probably you. By the second circuit, you can't feel your arms anymore. By the third, you're operating on pure fear and stubbornness. You complete the task, lower the bucket, and stand there dripping and shaking while the undercook examines you like you're a particularly disappointing piece of meat. Next time, move faster, he says, and walks away. The other servants return to their work. Nobody helps you. Nobody comments. This is just how things are. You've been publicly humiliated and physically punished for a minor breach of protocol. And the lesson is clear. Know your place, or suffer. But here's where it gets truly twisted. That undercook isn't even particularly cruel by kitchen standards. He's just maintaining order. In his mind, he's probably being educational, teaching you an important lesson about the hierarchy. There are undercooks in other royal kitchens who would have beaten you with a wooden spoon, or accidentally shoved you into a fire, or had you expelled from the kitchen entirely for the same offense. The kitchen hierarchy isn't just about rank, it's about survival. Everyone above you is protecting their position by ensuring everyone below them knows their place. And everyone below you wait. There is no one below you, which means you have to be extra careful because you have no one to kick down to, no one to displace your frustrations onto. You're the bottom, the floor, the foundation that everyone else stands on. As the morning progresses, You start to notice the other power dynamics at play. There's the official hierarchy, and then there's the real hierarchy, the invisible web of alliances, grudges, and political maneuvering that determines who actually gets things done. For example, there's William, one of the senior scullions. On paper, he's barely above you in rank. In practice, he's untouchable because his sister is the chambermaid to the queen, which means he has access to information and influence that no formal kitchen rank could provide. People are nice to William. People give William the easier jobs. William gets extra food at mealtimes, and nobody says a word. Then there's Margaret, an undercook who should be powerful but isn't, because she made the mistake of correcting the head cook about a sauce recipe 3 months ago. She was right, the sauce was better her way, but that doesn't matter. She questioned authority, and now she's effectively blacklisted from advancement. She'll be an undercook until she dies or leaves, and everyone knows it. You watch a master cook praise a journeyman for properly seasoning a dish, and you think it's genuine until another servant whispers to you that the journeyman is the master cook's nephew. Nepotism isn't a bug in this system, it's a feature. Family connections, regional loyalties, shared histories, they all matter as much as or more than actual skill. Historians still argue whether medieval kitchens were true meritocracies where skill could elevate anyone, or whether they were just as politically corrupt as the courts they served. The evidence strongly suggests the latter, but there are accounts of talented cooks rising from nothing to positions of real power, so maybe there was some fluidity. Not that you're likely to experience it. You're assigned to assist one of the pastry cooks today, which should be a privilege. Pastry work is delicate, skilled labor, far removed from the brutal physical tasks you've been doing. But of course, your role isn't to do pastry work. Your role is to prepare the workspace for the pastry cook, which means you're basically an animate table. Flour, the pastry cook says, not looking at you. You scramble to get flour. But which flour? There are 3 types sitting on the shelf: fine white flour made from wheat, coarser barley flour, and something that might be rye. You grab the white flour because it's the nicest, and the pastry cook immediately slaps your hand away. Are you trying to ruin me? That's for the marchpane, you idiot. The regular flour, the one that's not precious. You grab a different container. This one? Yes. Now measure out 2 pounds. 2 pounds. You look around for a scale. There isn't one nearby. There's one across the kitchen, currently being used by someone else. Do you leave to get it? Do you guess? Do you ask another question and risk another slap? You hesitate too long. The pastry cook sighs, that particular sigh that means you're the stupidest person they've ever encountered, and they're cursing whatever cruel fate brought you into their life. 2 handfuls. Packed. Are you capable of that? You scoop 2 handfuls of flour, trying to pack them the right amount. Too loose and you won't have enough. Too tight and you'll have too much. The pastry cook watches you with the expression of someone witnessing a slow-motion disaster. You deposit the flour onto the work surface. Now eggs. And try not to break them before you get them here. The eggs are kept in a separate room, a cool storage area where the temperature is more stable. You hurry there, your still damp clothes clinging to you uncomfortably, and grab 4 eggs from the basket. They're still in their shells, obviously, and they're filthy with chicken excrement and feathers. You carry them back carefully, cradling them against your chest. Did I say bring me dirty eggs? Did I say, please, Bring me eggs covered in shit so I can add that special flavor to the pastry? No, sir. I'll clean them. Now I have to wait while you clean eggs. Now my entire schedule is disrupted because you don't have the basic sense to clean eggs before bringing them to a pastry station. You rush to clean the eggs, using a damp cloth to wipe them down, gentle enough not to crack them but thorough enough to actually remove the filth. Your hands are shaking. You're sweating despite the relatively cool temperature away from the fires. You're acutely aware that everyone nearby can hear this interaction, and they're all making mental notes. This new servant is incompetent. You bring back the clean eggs. The pastry cook examines them, finds them acceptable barely and cracks them into a bowl with an expertise that makes it look effortless. Which it is, for them. They've cracked thousands of eggs. They could probably do it blindfolded. You've cracked maybe a dozen eggs in your entire life, and 3 of those attempts resulted in shells in the bowl. Now butter, the good butter, from the 2nd shelf. And if you bring me the rancid butter from the 3rd shelf, I will personally ensure you never work in this kitchen again. Good butter, 2nd shelf. You repeat this to yourself as you go to the storage area again. 2nd shelf. Good butter. Not 3rd shelf. Not rancid. 2nd shelf. Good butter. There are several containers on the 2nd shelf. They all look identical. Your heart sinks. You lean close and sniff each one, trying to detect any difference. They all smell like butter. They all look like butter. You make your best guess and bring back a container. The pastry cook doesn't even look up. That's the herb butter. You absolute fool. Plain butter. Is plain butter too complex a concept? You try again. This time you're correct, though you're not sure if it's because you've learned to distinguish butters or because you've run out of wrong options. This goes on for an hour. Every single request is a trap. Every task an opportunity for you to fail. And the failures aren't just embarrassingly strategic. Each one reinforces the power dynamic. Each one reminds you that you're ignorant, unskilled, and completely dependent on the mercy of those above you. But you're also learning. You're creating a mental map of the kitchen, learning where things are stored, what the different ingredients look like, which containers hold what. You're learning the pastry cook's preferences, their standards, their particular way of doing things. This knowledge is currency in the kitchen. It's how you survive. By midday, you've graduated from fetching ingredients to actual preparation work, the lowest level of preparation work. But still, you're given a mound of dough and told to knead it. Just knead it. Keep kneading until it's smooth and elastic. Your hands, already a disaster of blisters and cuts, sink into the dough. The repetitive motion of kneading push, fold, turn, push, fold, turn sends pain shooting up your forearms. The open wounds on your hands are getting flour and bits of dough in them, which can't be sanitary, but nobody cares about sanitary. Sanitary isn't a concept here. You're getting your blood and sweat and probably tears mixed into this dough, and it's going to be served to nobles who have no idea that their bread contains the physical suffering of a servant they'll never meet. You knead and knead, finding a rhythm that minimizes the pain, and you watch the kitchen operate around you. You're starting to understand the flow of it, the way information and materials move through the space. Orders come from the top. The head cook decides what's being made. Those orders flow down to the master cooks, who break them into specialized tasks. The undercooks assign specific work to the journeymen and upper-level servants. And the bottom-tier servants, people like you, are directed by whoever needs them in the moment. But there's also a horizontal flow, a network of informal communication and cooperation that exists despite the strict hierarchy. You see a journeyman quietly helping another journeyman who's falling behind on their work. You see two undercooks trading ingredients because one has excess of something the other needs. You see servants passing warnings up and down the chain. The head cook is in a bad mood. Watch yourself. The master roaster is looking for someone to blame for the burned capon. Stay out of sight. There's a rumor the king is bringing guests for dinner. Prepare for chaos. This informal network is how the kitchen actually functions. The formal hierarchy is for discipline and order, but the informal network is for survival and efficiency. And you're not part of it yet. You're too new, too unknown, too untested. But if you survive long enough, maybe you'll find your place in it. Around mid-afternoon, disaster strikes. Not for you directly, but you're close enough to witness it, and the lesson is burned into your memory forever. One of the Scaglianza boy named Thomas, who's been in the kitchen maybe a week longer than Yui's, carrying a platter of prepared pheasants to the roasting station. These aren't just any pheasants. These are elaborately prepared birds, stuffed with exotic spices that cost more than Thomas will earn in a year. Their skin carefully scored and seasoned. They're destined for the high table, for the king himself. Thomas trips. Maybe his foot catches on an uneven stone. Maybe he's exhausted and his legs give out. Maybe the platter is too heavy and he loses his grip. It doesn't matter why. What matters is that the pheasants hit the floor with a wet slap, skidding across the stone, collecting dirt and ash and who knows what else. The kitchen goes silent, absolutely silent. Even the fires seem to quiet down. The master cook in charge of poultry walks over slowly. He looks at the ruined birds. He looks at Thomas. His face is completely expressionless, which is somehow more terrifying than anger. "Do you know?" the master cook says, his voice conversational, "how long it took to prepare these birds?" Thomas is crying, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the snot running from his nose. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I didn't ask if you meant to. I asked if you know how long it took." "No, sir. For hours. For hours of skilled labor. Ingredients worth more than your miserable life. And now they're fit only for the dogs." He pauses. "Actually, the dogs deserve better." What happens next is instructive in the cruelest way. The master cook doesn't hit Thomas. He doesn't yell. He simply turns to one of the undercooks and says, "Dock his wages for a month. All of them, and remove him from kitchen duty." Thomas's face goes white. No wages for a month means no money to send to his family. No money for basic necessities. Nothing. And being removed from kitchen duty means he'll be reassigned to something worstable mucking, latrine cleaning, or just cast out entirely. "Sir, please, I have a mother. Should have thought of that before you destroyed the king's dinner." Thomas is dragged out by two other servants. You'll never see him again. Later, you'll hear he was assigned to the stables, or that he was sent away entirely, or that he died of fever in the servant quarters. The stories conflict, but the message is clear. Failure isn't just punished, it's annihilated. The kitchen resumes operation. Fresh pheasants are brought out. The work continues as if Thomas never existed. And you understand now, with crystalline clarity, that you are not a person here. You're a function. You're a pair of hands that performs tasks. If you perform those tasks well, you continue to exist in this space. If you fail, you're erased. The rest of your day is a blur of fear-motivated competence. You're terrified of making Thomas's mistake, so you move carefully, deliberately, double-checking everything. You carry things with both hands. You watch where you step. You confirm orders before acting on them. This paranoid caution saves you, but it also slows you down, which earns you a few cuffs to the head and several creative insults regarding your intelligence and probable ancestry. By evening, your body is screaming at you again, but your mind is even more exhausted than your muscles. Navigating the hierarchy, reading the unspoken rules, avoiding the countless ways you can fail, it's mentally draining in a way that physical labor isn't. You can push through muscle pain. You can work with blisters and burns. But the constant vigilance, the perpetual anxiety about making a mistake that will destroy your life, that's a different kind of exhausting. You collapse onto your straw pile that night and realize you've survived 2 days. 2 whole days. It feels like both an eternity and an eye blink. You're learning, slowly, painfully, how to exist in this space. You're mapping the hierarchy, understanding the power flows, figuring out who to avoid and who might offer a scrap of help. But you're also realizing something darker. This system is designed to break people. The hierarchy isn't just about organization. It's about control. It's about ensuring that everyone is so busy protecting their own position, so focused on not falling down the ladder, that they never question why the ladder exists in the first place. The cruelty isn't a flaw. It's a feature. And tomorrow, you'll wake up and do it all again. Because what choice do you have? You're starting to understand the rhythm of the kitchen, the hierarchy, the unspoken rules that can get you beaten or fired. But on your 4th morning, or is it your 5th? The days blur together in a haze of smoke and exhaustion. You're about to discover another layer of medieval kitchen hell that nobody warned you about. The ingredients themselves are trying to kill you. Not metaphorically, literally. You're assigned to the larder today, which sounds like a promotion until you actually get there and realize it's where food goes to stage its rebellion against humanity. The larder is a series of cool, dark rooms built into the castle's foundation where all the ingredients are stored. And by stored, I mean left to rot in interesting ways while everyone hopes for the best. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's not just bad, it's complex, layered, a symphony of decay in multiple movements. You can distinguish at least 7 different types of wrong. Sour milk, rancid fat, something fishy, something meaty that shouldn't smell like that, overripe vegetables, underripe desperation, and beneath it all, the damp stone smell of the castle foundation mixed with mold. Your guide today is Edmund, one of the larder keepers, a man who's worked here for 20 years and has developed the 1,000-yard stare of someone who's seen things. Food things. Terrible food things. Right then, Edmund says, his voice raspy from years of breathing basement air. Your job is to sort through the provisions and determine what's usable, what needs immediate cooking, and what goes to the pigs. This seems straightforward until he shows you the first barrel. It's full of salt pork, theoretically preserved and safe to eat. You peer inside and immediately wish you hadn't. The pork is swimming in brine that's turned a color you've never seen before, sort of greenish-gray with undertones of despair. Some pieces have a white film growing on them. Others have black spots. One piece appears to be moving, though you desperately hope that's just your imagination. How do I know which pieces are good? You ask. Edmund shrugs. Smell test. If it makes your eyes water, it's fine, that's just the salt and brine. If it makes you vomit, probably needs cooking immediately. If it smells sweet, don't even touch it. Just mark the barrel for the pigs. Sweet-smelling meat. You file this away in your growing mental encyclopedia of things that will kill you in a medieval kitchen. Putrefaction produces sweet smells as the proteins break down. Sweet meat is dead meat. Well, deader than it already was. You start sorting through the barrel, piece by piece, your hands plunging into the cold brine. The first piece seems okay, it smells like salt and pork. Nothing unusual. You toss it into the usable basket. The second piece makes your eyes water, just like Edmund said, into the basket. The third piece has those black spots, but Edmund examines it and grunts approval. Just the cure settling unevenly. It's fine. The fourth piece is where things get interesting. You pull it out, and it's slimy. Not brine wet slick, but actually slimy, with a texture like it's been coated in something biological. You sniff it cautiously, and the smell is definitely off, not sweet, but sour, with undertones of ammonia. Edmund? This 1 inch. He glances over. Boil it twice. It'll be fine for the servant's table. You stare at the slimy pork. You're sure? Been doing this 20 years. Haven't I? Nothing wrong with that piece that a good hard boil won't fix. Probably. Probably. That's the word you're learning to hate most in this kitchen. Probably safe. Probably won't kill anyone. Probably edible. Everything exists in this state of culinary uncertainty where you're constantly gambling with food safety and hoping you don't lose. You continue sorting, and you're building a mental database of what medieval food storage actually looks like versus what you might have imagined. There are no refrigerators, obviously, no modern preservatives, no plastic wrap or vacuum sealing. Everything relies on ancient preservation methods. Salting, smoking, drying, pickling, or just keeping things in a cool place and praying. The next barrel contains fish. Dried fish. Technically, though dried is a generous description. These are cod, or they used to be cod, before they were salted and hung up to dry in some warehouse somewhere. Now they're stiff as boards, crusted with salt crystals, and they smell like the ocean's revenge. You're supposed to sort through them and identify any that have mold or insect damage. You pick up the first fish and nearly drop it when you realize it's moving. No, wait, not moving. Crawling with things that are moving. Tiny bugs, some kind of mite or beetle, have made homes in the less salted crevices of the fish. They scatter as you handle it, running across your hands, and you suppress a scream because screaming would be unprofessional. The bugs are fine, Edmund says, not even looking up from his own sorting. Just brush them off. They're protein. You brush off the bugs with trembling fingers and examine the fish. Aside from its unexpected residence, it seems intact. Into the usable basket. The next fish has a suspicious dark patch that might be mold. You show it to Edmund. Cut around it. The rest is good. Of course. Why throw away an entire fish when you can just cut out the rotten part and serve the rest? This is the medieval approach to food safety. Optimistic minimalism. If most of it seems okay, serve most of it. Historians still argue whether medieval people actually got sick from their food as often as we imagine, or whether they had iron constitutions built up from a lifetime of eating questionable provisions. The evidence suggests both are true. People did get sick constantly, but they also survive things that would hospitalize a modern person. You move on to the vegetables, which are stored in bins of sand or straw to keep them cool and dry. Turnips, onions, carrots, parsnips, hardy root vegetables that can survive storage for months. Except some of them haven't survived. Some of them have decided to decompose in creative ways. The turnips are mostly fine, if you ignore the ones that have gone soft and are leaking a clear fluid that's definitely not water. Those go to the pigs. The onions are a mixed bag. Some are firm and good. Others have started sprouting green shoots from the top. And a few have turned completely to mush inside their papery skins. You learn to test each one by squeezing gently. Firm? Usable. Soft? Pig food. The carrots are where you encounter your first real crisis. You pull one from the sand, and it comes out with a colony of white, wriggling maggots attached to its side. You drop it with a yelp. Edmund sighs. What now? There are things on this carrot. He walks over, picks up the carrot, examines the maggots with the detached interest of a bored scientist. Fly larvae. They laid eggs in the storage sand. Happens sometimes. So this one's for the pigs? What? No. Wash it off. Cut away the damaged part. The rest is perfectly good. You stare at him. You stare at the maggot-infested carrot. You stare at him again. People are going to eat this? People are going to eat the part that doesn't have maggots. Yes. We're not wasteful here. Wash it thoroughly, cut away the bad bits, and add it to the soup pot. The cooking will kill anything that's left. This is your introduction to medieval food economics. Nothing is wasted. Nothing. If it can be salvaged, it will be salvaged. If it can't be salvaged for the nobles, it goes to the servants. If the servants won't eat it, it goes to the pigs. Only the truly irredeemable gets thrown away, and even then, it might be composted for the garden. You spend the next hour washing vegetables, cutting away rotten sections, and trying not to think too hard about what you're doing. Your hands are perpetually wet, pruning up like you've been in a bath for hours. The cuts and blisters from previous days' work sting in the cold water. You're developing a new appreciation for modern grocery stores, where the vegetables come pre-washed and relatively bug-free. But the vegetables are nothing compared to what comes next. Edmund leads you to another room, colder than the rest, where the fresh meat is kept. And by fresh, I mean killed sometime in the recent past. The room contains several large carcasses hanging from hooks. A deer, what looks like a wild boar, some rabbits, and something you can't quite identify. Your job is to check for spoilage. Edmund explains. Look for discoloration. Feel for sliminess. Smell for sweetness. If it's good, it stays. If it's questionable, we cook it today. If it's bad, the pigs eat well. You approach the deer carcass nervously. It's been skinned but not butchered, hanging there like a reminder of mortality. You're supposed to touch it, examine it. You've never done anything like this in your life. You press your fingers against the meat cautiously. It's cold, firm, and slightly sticky from the aging process. The color is deep red, which seems right. You sniff it carefully, expecting the worst, but it just smells like meat. Not sweet, not rotten, just meaty. This one's good. You announce, hoping you're right. Edmund nods. The deer came in yesterday. It's fine. Check the boar. The boar is a different story. As you approach it, You can already smell something off. Not the sweet smell of putrefaction, but something sour and sharp. The meat has dark patches that look wrong, and when you press your fingers against it, feels soft, almost mushy. This one's bad, you say. Edmund comes over, examines it, and frowns. Not bad, just old. We'll cook it today, roasted with plenty of spices. The spices will cover any off flavors. And there it is, the medieval culinary solution to questionable ingredients. When in doubt, add spices, not just for flavor, but to mask the taste of food that's starting to turn. Those expensive spices from the East pepper, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, they're not just status symbols. They're chemical warfare against food decay. You continue your inspection tour of the larder, discovering new horrors with each room. There's a barrel of eels swimming in murky water at least. You think they're swimming until you realize half of them are dead and floating. There's a bin of grain that's definitely got weevils in it. Tiny beetles crawling through the wheat. There's a cheese wheel that's more mold than cheese at this point, though Edmund assures you that's supposed to happen, and the mold is the good kind. How do you tell good mold from bad mold? Edmund's answer is enlightening. If it's blue or white, you're probably fine. If it's black or orange, less fine. If it's fuzzy and green, definitely not fine. Probably less fine. Definitely not fine. The medieval food safety spectrum. In another room, you find the preserved fruits, apples and pears packed in straw, dried plums and raisins, and something that might have been cherries once but is now a sticky, fermented mess at the bottom of a jar. The smell hits you like a wall. Sweet, alcoholic, with undertones of vinegar. Some of these fruits have been fermenting in their own juices, essentially turning into a primitive wine. Can we use these? You ask, pointing to the fermented cherries. Edmund considers. For cooking, yes, the alcohol will burn off. Just don't let anyone eat them raw unless you want them drunk and sick. Accidental alcohol is apparently another feature of medieval food storage. Without refrigeration, fruits would ferment naturally, especially in sealed containers. This could be useful. Fermented foods are actually more shelf-stable, but it could also be dangerous if someone didn't realize what they were eating. Your education continues with the dairy products, stored in the coolest part of the larder. Butter, cream, milk, and cheese, all in various states of preservation. The butter is heavily salted, which keeps it from going rancid too quickly, but some of the containers still smell off. The milk is mostly clabbered, thickened, and sour because fresh milk lasts maybe a day in these conditions. The clabbered milk will be used for cooking or making soft cheese. There's a container of cream that's separated into layers, with a watery bottom and a thick, yellowish top. Edmund schemes off the top layer, still good for cooking, and dumps the watery part into the pig bucket. Nothing wasted. And then there are the eggs. Oh, the eggs. They're stored in several baskets, some fresh, some less fresh, some that are definitely science experiments at this point. Edmund teaches you the water test. Fresh eggs sink. Older eggs float. Really old eggs practically levitate. You start testing them, one by one, creating piles of fresh, questionable, and absolutely not. One egg, when you pick it up, feels wrong, too light. You give it a gentle shake and hear sloshing inside, which you're pretty sure isn't supposed to happen. You hold it up to Edmund, who takes it, shakes it, and immediately tosses it into the pig bucket. Rotten. The insides have liquefied. If you'd cracked that open, you'd be smelling it for days. You're grateful for the water test. You're less grateful when one of the probably fine eggs turns out to be very not fine when you crack it open later, releasing a sulfurous stench that makes you gag. But that's the gamury, constantly gambling, constantly assessing, constantly hoping your judgment is correct. The final room in the larder contains the luxury items, the spices, the imported goods, the expensive ingredients that are kept under lock and key. Edmund has to unlock this room personally, and you understand why when you see the contents. Small jars of saffron, worth more than you'll earn in a year. Cones of sugar, expensive beyond belief. Precious peppercorns, cinnamon sticks, whole nutmegs. These ingredients are inventoried daily. If even one peppercorn goes missing, there will be an investigation. But even here, in the locked room with the precious goods, there are problems. Some of the spice containers have gotten damp, and the contents have clumped together. One jar of imported figs has developed mold. A container of something exotic, maybe cardamom, has been invaded by tiny insects that Edmund calls spice weevils. We'll sift out the weevils. Edmund says matter-of-factly, the spices are too expensive to throw away. Of course, why waste valuable cardamom when you can just remove the bugs and use it anyway? You're building a comprehensive understanding of medieval food philosophy. Salvage everything, waste nothing, and if it probably won't kill anyone, it's probably fine to serve. By midday, you've completed your larder assessment, and you return to the main kitchen with lists of what needs to be used immediately, what can wait, and what goes to the pigs. The head cook reviews your work with Edmund, nodding occasionally, frowning at other entries. The boar needs cooking today, Edmund reports, starting to turn. Heavy spice rub, long roasting. The head cook decides. Serve it with the wine sauce that'll cover any off flavors. What else? Some of the salt fish has mites, but it's salvageable. The turnips are mostly good, but we've got maybe a week before they start going soft. The milk's all clabbered, so it's cooking milk only. This is the daily calculation. Matching ingredients to dishes, planning meals around what needs to be used before it becomes unsalvageable. It's not about creating the perfect menu, it's about preventing waste while hopefully not poisoning anyone. You're assigned to help prepare the questionable boar, which means you get to see the heavy spice rub process up close. The master cook in charge of meats creates a paste using pepper, cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and some other spices you can't identify. This paste, which probably costs more than a peasant's monthly wages, gets rubbed all over the boar meat, inside and out, coating it so thoroughly that you can barely see the actual meat anymore. This will mask any flavor issues. The master cook explains to his assistant, not to you, but you're listening anyway. The king will taste exotic spices and wine, not aging boar. That's the art. The art of deception, you think. The art of making questionable ingredients taste expensive. The art of survival in a kitchen where waste is unacceptable and food safety is negotiable. The boar goes on to a spit, not your spit. Thank goodness. You've graduated from permanent spit duty and begins its long roasting process. The spices fill the air with a smell that's actually pleasant, covering the earlier wrongness you detected. It's working. The alchemy of medieval cooking is transforming potential disaster into something that might actually be edible. But as you work through the rest of the day, preparing vegetables, handling ingredients, watching the cooks transform questionable provisions into meals for the nobility. You can't shake a growing realization. You're participating in a massive, ongoing gamble with food safety. Every meal served from this kitchen is a roll of the dice. Maybe the salt pork was fine. Maybe the maggot-infested carrots were properly cleaned. Maybe the aging boar is safe after all the spices and cooking. Maybe. And if it's not, if someone gets sick, if the food causes genuine harm, you already know the answer. It won't be the head cook's fault. It won't be the master cook's responsibility. It'll be blamed on whoever handled the ingredients, people like Edmund, like you, like the other low-ranking servants who do the sorting and the washing and the preparing. You'll be the scapegoat for decisions you didn't make, following protocols you didn't create, working with ingredients you didn't choose. That night, as you collapse onto your straw pile, your hands still smelling of various states of food decay despite multiple washings, you understand another layer of medieval kitchen life. You're not just fighting fires and knives and the brutal hierarchy. You're fighting the ingredients themselves, in a battle against rot and decay and time, armed with nothing but salt, spices, and desperate optimism. And tomorrow, you'll go back into the larder and do it all again. Because someone has to feed the nobles, and someone has to gamble with the ingredients, and that someone is you. You're developing calluses on your calluses, learning to identify dangerous mold versus good mold, and you've almost stopped flinching when something in the larder moves unexpectedly. You're adapting, surviving, becoming part of the kitchen's brutal ecosystem. But on your 8th day, or maybe it's the 9th, you've genuinely lost count. You're about to learn that the ingredients aren't the only things trying to kill you. The tools and equipment are just as deadly, and the kitchen itself is a death trap wrapped in stone and flames. It starts with a simple assignment. You're told to sharpen knives. This sounds straightforward, maybe even relaxing compared to your usual tasks of hauling water or sorting through rotting vegetables. You're led to a corner of the kitchen where the sharpening station is set. UPA grinding wheel mounted on a wooden frame, with a collection of knives nearby that range from small paring knives to cleavers that could decapitate a horse. The grinding wheel is operated by a foot pedal. You push down with your foot. The wheel spins. You hold the blade against the stone at the correct angle, and theoretically, the knife gets sharper. The master of the blade station, yes. There's someone whose entire job is managing the kitchen's cutting implements, demonstrates the technique. Watch the angle, he says, holding a knife against the spinning stone. Sparks fly off in a shower of orange light. Too steep and you ruin the edge. Too shallow and you're wasting everyone's time. Feel the blade, listen to the sound, and for God's sake, keep your fingers away from the wheel. He hands you the knife and a medium-sized blade that's seen better days. The edge is chipped and dull, probably from someone using it to chop through bone without proper technique. Your job is to restore it. You position the knife against the wheel, press the pedal, and immediately everything goes wrong. The angle is off, the blade catches on the stone, and the knife nearly flies out of your hand. You grip it tighter, adjust the angle, try again. This time the blade slides along the stone with a screech that makes your teeth hurt. Not like that. The blade master snatches the knife from you, demonstrates again, this time slower. See? Consistent pressure, consistent angle. The blade should sing, not scream. You try again, and again, and again. By your 10th attempt, you're starting to get something resembling the right technique. The blade makes a sound that's less painful, and you can feel the edge improving under your fingers. But you're also discovering that sharpening knives is brutal on your hands and arms. The repetitive motion sends cramps up your forearm. The grip required to hold the blade steady makes your blistered palms scream. And the constant vigilance required to keep your fingers away from the spinning stone is mentally exhausting. 20 minutes in, you slip. It's just a tiny slip, a momentary lapse in concentration, but the knife shifts against the stone and the wheel grabs it, yanking it toward your hand. You pull back just in time, but your finger grazes the spinning stone. The grinding wheel removes a layer of skin in an instant, like an extremely aggressive cheese grater made of pure malice. You yelp, pull your hand back, and examine the damage. Your fingertip is bleeding, the skin scraped raw, showing the pink flesh underneath. It burns like you've stuck your finger in a fire. The blade master glances over. You'll live. Wrap it and keep working. The knives don't sharpen themselves. You wrap your finger in a strip of cloth torn from your already tattered tunic and continue working. Blood seeps through the cloth, but you keep going because stopping isn't an option. This is your introduction to one of the fundamental truths of medieval kitchen work. Minor injuries are just part of the job. A scraped finger, a small burn, a shallow cut, these aren't reasons to stop. These are barely worth mentioning. You finish sharpening the assigned knives, each blade now honed to a dangerous edge, and you're sent to help with the butchering station. This is where the real knife work happens, where large carcasses are broken down into usable cuts, and where the potential for serious injury escalates dramatically. The butchering table is a massive slab of wood, scarred with thousands of knife cuts, stained dark with blood and fat that have seeped into the grain over years of use. A pig carcass lies on it, already split down the middle, waiting to be portioned. The head butcher is there, along with 2 assistants, and they're working with knives that make the sharpening project seem quaint. These are serious blades 10 inches long, thick, heavy, designed to cut through muscle and fat and occasionally bone. Your job is to hold pieces of meat steady while the butcher cuts them. That's it. Just hold the meat. Don't let it slip. Don't move unexpectedly. And definitely don't put your fingers anywhere near the cutting line. The butcher makes the first cut, separating a shoulder from the ribcage. The knife goes through the meat with shocking easy, a testament to both the knife's sharpness and the butcher's skill. He hands you the shoulder. Put this with the roasting cuts. You carry the shoulder to the designated area, trying not to think about how heavy it is or how slippery with blood and fat. You return to the table. The butcher is already working on the next section. Hold this steady, he says, pointing to the belly section. You place both hands on the meat, gripping it firmly but not so hard that your fingers extend past the edge where he'll be cutting. The butcher raises his knife, and you suddenly become very aware of how close your hands are to a blade that could sever your fingers as easily as it's severing this pork. He cuts. The knife comes down in a smooth, controlled arc, passing within an inch of your thumb. You hold absolutely still, barely breathing. The meat separates cleanly. You're still intact. This continues for the next hour. You hold meat while the butcher cuts. Each time, you're acutely aware that one slip, one unexpected movement from either of you, and you're losing fingers. The butcher works with practiced precision, but he's human. He could make a mistake. The knife could slip. Your grip could fail. Historians still argue whether medieval kitchen workers had higher rates of traumatic injury than other laborers. or whether the dangerous conditions were simply accepted as normal for the time. The evidence suggests both injuries were common, but they were also just part of life. You make it through the pig butchering without losing any body parts, which feels like a genuine achievement. But the day's dangers are far from over. You're next assigned to the pot washing station, which you've done before, but today they're washing the large cauldrons, the massive iron pots that hold enough stew to feed 50 people. These cauldrons, when empty, weigh probably 60 pounds. When they're full of water and food, they weigh several hundred pounds. And when they need cleaning, they're awkward, unwieldy, and coated in a layer of burned-on food that has achieved a near-mineral hardness. The cleaning process involves multiple servants. 2 of you will tip the cauldron on its side. A third will climb partially inside with a scrubbing brush and sand, and a fourth will pour water as needed. You're assigned as one of the tippers. On my count, says the lead pot washer. 1, 2, 3, lift. You and another servant grab the cauldron's rim and heave. The thing barely moves. It's even heavier than you expected, the iron thick and solid. You adjust your grip, plant your feet, and lift again. This time it tips, slowly, ponderously, like a small building deciding to lie down. Water sloshes out cold, greasy water that's been sitting in the pot since last night. The cauldron reaches the tipping point, and suddenly all that weight is pulling it down faster than you can control. It crashes onto its side with a sound like a church bell being murdered. The noise echoes through the kitchen. Everyone looks over. Carefully, the head pot washer screams, "That cauldron is worth more than your lives. If you dent it, you'll be working off the cost for the next decade." You and your partner exchange glances. How are you supposed to carefully tip something that weighs as much as a small cow? But you try again with the next cauldron, attempting to control the descent. Your muscles strain. Your back protests. The cauldron tips, and this time you manage to ease it down more gently. Still loud, but no new dents. While the cauldron is on its side, another servant climbs partially inside to scrub. You can see them working, their whole upper body disappearing into the iron cavity, scrubbing at the burned residue with sand and a brush. This looks uncomfortable and claustrophobic, but relatively safe until you remember that this is a medieval kitchen, where relatively safe is a meaningless concept. The servant inside the cauldron yelps and scrambles backward, nearly getting stuck in the opening. They emerge with their hand cradled against their chest, blood dripping from their palm. There's a crack inside. They gasp. A sharp edge. I didn't see it. Of course there's a sharp edge. The cauldron has been used over open flames for years, heating and cooling, expanding and contracting. It's developed stress fractures, rough spots, potentially dangerous flaws, and no one thought to warn the person climbing inside. The injured servant is sent off to wrap their hand. They'll probably be back to work within the hour, and someone else is sent into the cauldron. This time, they feel carefully for any sharp edges before scrubbing. Takes 3 times as long, but no one else gets cut. You spend the rest of the morning tipping cauldrons, your back screaming, your hands raw from gripping wet iron, and your nerves frayed from the constant awareness that one wrong move could drop several hundred pounds of metal on your feet, or your head, or any other body part you'd prefer to keep intact. After the cauldrons comes your introduction to the spit mechanism, not the simple hand-turned spits you've been working with, but the mechanical spit, a recent innovation that uses a system of weights and gears to rotate the spit automatically. This sounds like a blessing, like progress, like something that might actually make the job easier. It's not. The mechanical spit is a contraption of iron gears, chains, and a heavy weight that hangs from a rope. The weight slowly descends, turning the gears, which rotate the spit. It's like a giant, dangerous clock that cooks meat. Your job is to maintain it, which means cleaning the gears, checking the chain for weak links, and occasionally climbing up to adjust the weight when it runs out of descent and needs to be hoisted back up. The master of the mechanical spit, there's a specialist for everything in this kitchen, shows you the basics. The gears need to be cleaned weekly. Fat and smoke build up, gum up the works. You'll scrub them with this wire brush. He demonstrates, brushing at the gears while they're stationary. It looks simple enough. Then he winds up the mechanism and lets it run. The gears start turning, clicking and grinding with a mechanical rhythm. The spit rotates slowly, steadily, a chicken roasting above the fire. Never, ever put your hands near the gears while it's running, he says. The mechanism is strong enough to turn a full ox. It'll take your fingers off without even slowing down. You nod, making a mental note to stay far away from the moving parts. But of course, staying away isn't an option, because your job involves working around this machine constantly. Later that day, you're sent to adjust the weight. The rope has played out, the weight has reached the bottom of its travel, and the spit has stopped turning. You need to haul the weight back up to the top. The weight is a large iron cylinder, maybe 50 pounds of solid metal. There's a second rope, a hauling line, that you're supposed to use to lift it. You grab the hauling line and pull. The weight barely moves. You pull harder, throwing your whole body weight into it. The iron cylinder rises an inch, 2 inches. This is going to take forever. You wrap the rope around your hands for better grip, a decision you'll immediately regret, and heave with all your strength. The weight rises steadily now as you find a rhythm. Pull, wrap, gaining inches at a time. Your hands are burning from the rope friction. Your shoulders feel like they're being pulled from their sockets. But the weight is rising, approaching the top position. And then the rope slips. Not completely, you don't lose your grip, but it slides a few inches through your hands before you can stop it. The friction burns your palms instantly, the rough rope tearing through skin. You smell burning your own skin, scorched by the rope. The weight drops those few inches and then catches again as you regain control. You secure the weight at the top, tie off the rope with shaking hands, and examine the damage. Your palms are striped with rope burns, raw and weeping. The pain is extraordinary, a burning sensation that makes your blistered hands seem like a pleasant memory. You wrap your hands again in cloth and return to work. Because that's what you do. That's what everyone does. The kitchen doesn't stop for injuries. It barely pauses for deaths. The afternoon brings a new danger. The ovens. These aren't like modern ovens with temperature controls and safety features. These are basically caves of fire built into the castle walls. Massive brick structures that are heated by burning wood inside them. Then the coals are raked out and the food is put in to bake in the residual heat. Your job is to help load bread into the ovens. The baker has prepared dozens of loaves, shaped and risen, ready to bake. The ovens have been heating for hours and are now at temperature. The process is simple. Use a long wooden paddle called a peel to slide the loaves into the oven. Wait for them to bake. Then use the peel to remove them. The baker demonstrates. He slides the peel into the oven. The opening is maybe 2 feet square, and the oven interior extends back 6 or 7 feet and deposits a loaf on the brick floor with a practiced flick of his wrist. In goes another loaf, and another. He makes it look easy. Your turn, he says, handing you the peel with a loaf balanced on it. You approach the oven opening, and the heat hits you like a physical force. This isn't the wet heat of boiling water or the radiant heat of the open fires. This is dry, intense, baking heat that makes your eyeballs feel like they're drying out. The air itself seems to shimmer. You slide the peel into the oven, trying to mimic the baker's technique. But the peel is long, maybe 8 feet, and awkward, and you're trying to control it while leaning away from the heat. The loaf slides off the peel too early, landing closer to the opening than it should. You try to adjust it, pushing it further back, but the peel catches on the brick floor and the loaf flips over. Carefully, the baker barks. Each loaf is accounted for. Ruin one and it comes out of your wages. What wages? You think bitterly, but you don't say it. You retrieve the flipped loaf. It's not ruined, just misshapen, and try again. This time you get it further into the oven, though not as far back as the baker's loaves. You load loaf after loaf, and each time you have to stick your arms into that hellish heat. Your face feels sunburned. The hair on your forearms is singed. Sweat pours down your face, stinging your eyes. Your hands on the peel handle are slipping from sweat and the rope burns from earlier. On your 15th loaf, you lose your grip. The peel tips forward. The loaf slides off, and in your scramble to catch it, you lean too close to the oven opening. Your sleeve brushes against the hot brick at the edge. The wool ignites instantly. You drop the peel and stagger backward, frantically batting at your sleeve. The flames are small but growing, the wool smoldering and catching. Someone throws a bucket of water on you, cold water that hits the burning fabric with a hiss of steam. The fire goes out, but your arm underneath is burned, the skin red and already blistering. The baker examines your arm with about as much concern as he'd show for a slightly overcooked roll. You'll live. Wrap it and get back to work. We have 40 more loaves to load. You wrap your arm. The cloth supply for your various injuries is running low and continue loading bread. Each movement of your arm sends pain shooting from the burn, but you keep going. What choice do you have? By evening, you're a walking catalog of injuries. Scraped finger from the grinding wheel. Rope burns on both palms. A slash on your hand from the cauldron's sharp edge. A burn on your arm from the oven. Various bumps and bruises from the day's work. You're fairly certain you've also strained something in your back from lifting the spit weight. But here's the truly horrifying part. You're getting off easy. You look around the kitchen at the other workers, and you see real injuries. One of the journeyman cooks is missing half of his left hand, 3 fingers gone, probably from a butchering accident years ago. Another servant has a massive burn scar covering the entire side of his face, the skin puckered and shiny. An older pot washer moves with a pronounced limp, the result of a cauldron falling on his foot and crushing it beyond repair. These aren't rare injuries. These are the visible reminders of the kitchen's casual brutality. For every person with a major injury, there are dozens with minor ones. And for every person with minor ones, there are hundreds of close calls, near misses, moments when disaster was avoided by pure luck. The kitchen is a machine that runs on human bodies, and like any machine, it requires maintenance. Except the maintenance comes in the form of fresh servants to replace the broken ones. You're a replaceable part in a system that will use you up and spit you out. If you're lucky. If you're unlucky, It'll use you up and you'll still be here, broken but unable to leave, trapped in this cycle of injury and survival. That night, as you lie on your straw pile, cataloging your various pains, you realize something. The kitchen doesn't have to kill you quickly to kill you. Can do it slowly, through accumulated injuries, through the gradual destruction of your body. Cut here, a burn there, a strained muscle, a broken bone. Each one heals imperfectly. Each one leaves you slightly weaker, slightly more vulnerable to the next injury. You're not going to die dramatically in a fire or from a knife wound. You're going to die in pieces, losing functionality bit by bit, until you're too broken to work and you're cast out to survivor note in your own. Welcome to day 9. Or is it 10? The days blur together, marked not by sunrise and sunset, but by the accumulation of scars. You've survived nearly 2 weeks in the medieval royal court kitchen, which apparently makes you a veteran. Or at least that's what you tell yourself as you drag your battered body out of bed on what you think is day 12. Your collection of injuries has expanded like a grotesque portfolio. The burns, the cuts, the rope abrasions, and a spectacular bruise on your hip from when you slipped on fat slick stones yesterday and crashed into a table corner. But today, you're about to learn about a job that makes all your previous tasks seem quaint and safe by comparison. Today, you're being trained as a backup taster. The royal taster is a position of genuine importance in the court hierarchy. This is the person who samples every dish before it reaches the king's lips, the human shield against poison, the living assurance that the food is safe. It's a prestigious job. You get to taste the finest food in the kingdom. You have direct access to the monarch, and you're trusted with the literal survival of the realm's leader. It's also a job with the life expectancy of a mayfly. You're brought before the current head taster, a man named Richard who holds the official title of Royal Sewer, from the Old French assur, meaning one who seats guests and oversees service. But the modern connotations are unfortunately appropriate. Richard is maybe 30 years old, which in this profession makes him ancient. He's well-dressed, well-fed, and his hands don't bear the scars and burns of kitchen work. But there's something in his Aisa wariness, a constant calculation, a man perpetually aware that his next meal could be his last. "You're the new backup," Richard says, looking you over with the enthusiasm of someone who's been handed a particularly disappointing turnip. "Can you read?" "No, sir." He sighs. "Of course not. Can you distinguish flavors? Bitter from sweet, that sort of thing?" "Yes, sir." "Good enough. Your job is simple. When I'm not available, you taste everything before it reaches the royal table. And I mean everything. The bread, the meat, the sauces, the wine, the water. You take a portion of each dish. You chew it thoroughly. You wait. If you don't die or fall violently ill, the king eats. The casual way he says, "if you don't die," makes your stomach drop. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't just ceremonial. People actually try to poison the king, and you're about to become the human test subject. "How long do I wait?" you ask, your voice smaller than you'd like. "Depends on the poison," Richard says, and he's completely serious. "Some work immediately, you'll know within minutes. Others are slower, take an hour or more. For the king's main meals, we taste 30 minutes before service. For smaller courses, 15 minutes. For wine, we taste and then observe for signs." "What signs?" Richard ticks them off on his fingers like he's reciting a recipe. Sweating, dizziness, stomach cramps, difficulty breathing, confusion, numbness in the extremities, blurred vision, irregular heartbeat, or the obvious one, death. If you experience any of these, you signal immediately. And then we don't serve that dish to the king. We investigate who prepared it, and you hope you got a small enough dose that you survive. He says this like he's explaining how to properly fold a napkin. You're trying to process this information, trying to reconcile the reality that your job description now includes test subject for assassination attempts. When Richard continues with the training, the most common poisons you'll encounter are arsenic, hemlock, and various plant-based toxins. Arsenic is tricky. It's tasteless in small doses, though sometimes there's a slight metallic flavor. Hemlock is bitter, but that can be masked with spices. Nightshade berries are sweet, which makes them dangerous because they're actually pleasant going down. He leads you to a side room where there's a table laid out with various substances, powders, plants, liquids. This is apparently the taster's education chamber, where you learn to identify poisons. This is wolfsbane, Richard says, pointing to a purple flower. Even touching it can cause numbness. Ingesting it causes immediate burning in the mouth, then paralysis, then death. This is foxglove, causes heart irregularities. This is white bryonivolent, purging from both ends, usually not fatal but extremely unpleasant. This is mercury, delayed effects, cumulative poisoning, drives you mad before it kills you. The list continues. You're getting a comprehensive education in medieval toxicology, learning all the ways that plants, minerals, and prepared substances can kill a human being. It's like the world's most depressing botanical garden. Why are you teaching me this if I can't read? You ask. How am I supposed to remember all these? You probably won't, Richard says bluntly. Most backup tasters don't last long enough to need this knowledge. But if you do survive, you'll learn by experience, and by watching others die. He says this so matter-of-factly that it takes a moment for the horror to sink in. This is a job where you learn by watching your colleagues be poisoned, where your education comes from observing people convulse and die, then memorizing what they ate. Historians still argue whether royal food tasters actually died with any frequency, or whether the position was more ceremonial than dangerous. The evidence suggests it varied by court and political climate. Some periods were genuinely lethal for tasters, while others saw the role become more symbolic. Now, Richard says, we practice with today's luncheon. The king is dining in 2 hours. We start tasting in 90 minutes. You'll observe me, learn the process, and if everything goes well, you won't die today. The next hour is spent in preparation. The dishes for the king's meal are prepared with extra security. The master cooks themselves oversee every step. Trusted servants handle the ingredients, and nothing is left unattended from the moment it starts cooking until it reaches the tasting table. You watch this process with new eyes, understanding now that every precaution exists because people actually want to kill the king, and food is a prime vector for assassination. The meal being prepared is elaborate. Roasted swan, venison in wine sauce, a fish pie, several types of bread, honeyed fruits, and wine from the royal cellars. Each dish is a potential murder weapon. Each one needs to be tested. 90 minutes before service, the dishes are brought to the tasting room, a small chamber near the king's dining hall. Richard presides over a table where portions of each dish have been plated. These aren't tiny portions, either you need to consume enough that any poison would take effect. We start with the wine. Richard explains. Wine is easy to poison because the flavor can mask many toxins. Watch. He takes a goblet, swirls it, sniffs it deeply, then takes a substantial drink. Not a sipa drink. He holds the wine in his mouth, swishing it around like he's trying to clean his teeth with it, then swallows. He sets down the goblet and stands still, eyes closed, clearly focusing on internal sensations. No burning, no numbness. Flavor is appropriate for the vintage. He reports, seemingly to himself but also instructing you. No immediate signs. We wait. 5 minutes pass. Richard remains still, monitoring his own body for signs of poisoning. It's eerie, watching someone treat their own potential death with such clinical detachment. Wine is clear. He finally says, "Next, the bread." The process repeats with each dish. Richard takes a substantial portion, chews thoroughly, swallows, then waits to see if his body rebels. With the venison, he's particularly careful, chewing slowly, noting the flavors, trying to detect anything that shouldn't be there under the wine sauce and spices. Spices can hide poison, he tells you, but they can't hide the effects. A poison dish might taste perfect and still kill you. That's why we wait. 30 minutes pass. Richard has consumed portions of everything on the king's menu. He's eaten what amounts to a full meal, and now he stands there, a living barometer of food safety, waiting to see if he'll survive. "I feel fine," he says. Slight fullness from eating so much, but no adverse symptoms. The meal is safe. A servant is dispatched to inform the king that the food has been tested and approved. The king will dine soon, safe in the knowledge that someone else has already risked death for his meal. That's the job, Richard says to you. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's terrifying, and sometimes it's fatal. Questions? You have about 1,000 questions, but the main one comes out. How many tasters have died? Richard considers this. In my time here, 3. 1 from arsenic in the wine dead within an hour. 1 from what we think was hemlock in a sauce took 4 hours to die. It was unpleasant. 1 from an unknown substance, possibly some exotic poison from the east. That one took 2 days, and I watched the whole thing. 3 deaths. In how long? You're afraid to ask. That was over 8 years. Richard adds, seeing your expression. So not frequent, but not rare either. Enough to keep you sharp. Enough to make every meal a gamble. The rest of the day is spent shadowing Richard, learning the protocols, the procedures, the subtle signs that something might be wrong. You learn that certain cooks are more trustworthy than others, not because of skill, but because of politics. A cook with family in the king's favor is less likely to poison the food. A cook who's recently been passed over for promotion might bear a grudge. You learn that poison attempts are sometimes clumsy and obvious. A dish that tastes wrong, a strange residue, an unusual color, but sometimes they're sophisticated, using small doses over time to build up cumulative effects, or combinations of substances that are individually harmless but deadly together. You learn that your job isn't just tasting food, it's understanding politics, reading motivations, knowing who might want the king dead this week. It's part food safety, part detective work, part survival instinct, and you learn that the taster's position, for all its prestige and relative comfort, is fundamentally about being expendable. You're a barrier between the king and death, a human shield made of flesh and digestion. Your value lies entirely in your willingness to risk your life for every meal. Later that afternoon, you get your first solo assignment. The king wants wine in his chamber, just wine. A simple request. Richard is busy with preparations for the evening meal, so you're sent. The wine is brought from the cellar, a bottle from the royal reserve. The servant who brings it is someone you recognize from the kitchen, someone who's been working here for years. Trustworthy, probably. But probably isn't good enough when you're the one who has to drink it first. You're brought to an antechamber near the king's quarters. The wine is poured into a gobleta, beautiful thing, gold and jeweled, worth more than you'll earn in a lifetime. You hold the goblet, this precious object, filled with wine that might be perfectly fine or might kill you. You sniff it. It smells like wine. Rich, complex, the scent of fermented grapes. No chemical odor, no bitterness that shouldn't be there. But smell isn't enough. Poison can be odorless. You take a drink. Not a sip, you need enough to trigger any poison's effects. The wine is excellent, probably the best wine you'll ever taste. Smooth, balanced, with flavors you don't have words for. You swallow, and then you wait. The antechamber is quiet except for the distant sounds of the castle. You stand there, holding the goblet, monitoring your own body for signs of poison. Does your mouth feel numb? Is that tingling in your fingers normal nervous tension or the beginning of paralysis? Is your heart racing from fear or from toxins? 5 minutes pass. 10. 15. You feel fine. Just nervous. Just terrified. Just acutely aware that your life depends on the honesty and competence of people you barely know. The wine is safe. Your grace. You finally call through the door. The king's chamberlain retrieves the gobelture, not important enough to actually see the king, and you're dismissed. You've survived your first solo tasting. The wine was fine. You're still alive. But as you walk back to the kitchen, your hands are shaking, not from poison, but from the realization of what you've just done. You drank something that could have killed you, based on nothing but a sniff and a prayer. And you'll have to do it again, and again, every time the king wants to eat or drink when Richard is unavailable. This is your life now. You're not just fighting fires and knives and rotting ingredients. You're fighting the political machinations of a royal court where poison is a tool of statecraft, where your death might be the opening move in someone's scheme to overthrow the kingdom. That evening, as you lie on your straw pile, you think about the royal tasters who died. You wonder if they knew, as they took that fatal sip or bite, that they were poisoned. Did they feel it immediately, that wrongness spreading through their body? Or did it creep up slowly, giving them time to understand what was happening but not enough time to do anything about it? You wonder how Richard does it, meal after meal, year after year, knowing that any dish could be the one that kills him. How do you live with that level of risk? How do you eat anything ever again without suspicion? But you already know the answer. You do it because you have to, because refusing means losing your position, which means starvation or worse. Because in this castle, in this kitchen, in this world, you don't have choices. You have survival. And survival means drinking the king's wine, eating the king's food, and hoping that today isn't the day someone decides your death is an acceptable price for their ambitions. You touch the goblet-shaped bruise on your hypno. Wait, that's from the table corner. You touch your rope-burned palms. You touch the burn on your arm from the oven. And you add one more item to your growing list of things that can kill you. The very food you're supposed to ensure is safe. Welcome to the life of a royal taster. Your predecessor lasted 8 years. The one before that, for hours. How long will you last? You wake up on day 15, you're keeping count now, marking each survived day as a small victory, and you're starting to understand that death by poison might actually be merciful compared to what happens when you fail to meet the impossible standards of royal cuisine. Today, you're about to discover that in a medieval court kitchen, punishment for culinary mistakes ranges from humiliating to genuinely horrific, and the line between the two is disturbingly thin. It starts before dawn, as always, but this morning there's a different energy in the kitchen, a tension that makes the air feel heavy. You learn why within minutes. Today is a feast day. Not just any feast, but a celebration for a visiting duke, which means the kitchen is expected to produce a meal that demonstrates the king's wealth, power, and sophistication. Everything must be perfect. Absolutely everything. The head cook gathers the entire kitchen staff in the main hall. This is unusual. Normally, orders flow down through the hierarchy. But today, everyone needs to hear this directly. Today, we serve perfection. The head cook announces, his voice carrying through the smoke-filled space. Every dish must be flawless. Every flavor must be balanced. Every presentation must be worthy of royalty. Because if we fail, if we embarrass the king in front of the duke, we will all suffer. The weight of that all hangs in the air. This isn't an individual threat, this is collective punishment. If one person fails, everyone pays. You're suddenly very aware of the weakest links in the kitchen, the servants who are struggling, the ones who might make a mistake that brings consequences down on everyone. Your assignment for the day is assisting with the subtleties, those elaborate decorative food sculptures that the nobles love. Today's main subtlety is meant to be a castle made from marchpane, medieval marzipan, complete with towers, battlements, and tiny flags. It's edible architecture, a demonstration of skill and artistry that has nothing to do with taste and everything to do with showing off. The master confectioner, a man named Hugh who takes his work far too seriously even by medieval standards, is in charge. He's been working on this subtlety for 2 days already, building the base structure, and now it's time for the detail work. Your job is to help make the marchpane, color it, and shape the tiny decorative elements under Hugh's exacting supervision. Marchpane is made from ground almonds and sugar, pounded together into a paste. The almonds must be blanched, peeled, and ground to an absolutely fine powder. Any grittiness in the final product is unacceptable. You're assigned to the grinding, working with a mortar and pestle to reduce almonds to powder. Grind, grind, grind. Your shoulders ache. Your arms burn. The repetitive motion sends pain through your rope-burned hands. But you keep grinding because Hugh inspects every batch, running the almond powder between his fingers to check for texture. 3 times he rejects your work, sending it back for more grinding. The 4th time, he nods grudgingly. Acceptable. Now the sugar. The sugar is precious. It's been imported from somewhere distant and exotic, and it costs more than gold by weight. You're given a small amount to grind with the almond powder, creating the marchpane paste. Every grain matters. If you spill any, you'll be paying for it with wages you don't technically have. You grind the almonds and sugar together, adding just enough rose water to create a paste. The smell is actually pleasant sweet, nutty, floral. For a moment, you almost forget you're in hell. Then Hugh tastes a tiny portion and spits it out. Too much rose water. It's too wet. Grind it longer. Let it dry slightly. You grind more. Your arms are going to fall off. You're grinding almonds in your sleep now. You've become one with the mortar and pestle. You are the grinding motion personified. Finally, Hugh deems it acceptable. The marchpane is ready to be colored and shaped. He has small pots of colored powder, some from plants, some from minerals, some from sources you don't want to think about. Red from cochineal insects, blue from ground lapis lazuli, even more expensive than the sugar, yellow from saffron, green from some plant you don't recognize. You will create small flags. Hugh instructs. Each flag must be identical in size, colored with the Duke's heraldry, and mounted on these tiny sticks. I need 40 flags. Perfect flags. He shows you the heraldic design, diagonal stripes of blue and gold. You're supposed to create this pattern on marchpane flags the size of your thumbnail. 40 times. Perfectly. You start working, using a tiny knife to cut the marchpane into flag shapes, then carefully applying the colored paste in stripes. Your hands are shaking from fatigue, which makes precision nearly impossible. The first flag is passable. The second is slightly crooked. The third has uneven stripes. Hugh examines your work. He says nothing, just picks up all 3 flags and crushes them in his fist. Again, and this time, steady your hands. If you're too weak to do this properly, I'll find someone who isn't. You try again, focusing intensely, willing your trembling hands to cooperate. The 4th flag is better. The 5th is actually good. The 6th is perfect. Finally, Hugh says, continue. I want 40 by midday. You work for hours, creating tiny flags, each one requiring intense concentration. By flag 20, your eyes are crossing from the close work. By flag 30, you've developed a headache that feels like someone's driving nails into your skull. By flag 40, you're fairly certain you'll never want to see anything blue and gold ever again. But you've done it. 40 tiny, perfect flags, each one representing hours of grinding, mixing, cutting, and painting. Hugh inspects them with the critical eye of someone judging a kingdom's fate, which in a way, he is. Adequate, he finally says, which your learning is the highest praise he gives. Now help me assemble the castle. The castle base is already constructed walls, towers, a central keep. Now comes the delicate process of attaching the decorative elements. Hugh applies tiny amounts of sugar syrup as glue, and you hand him the flags one by one, which he positions on the towers. Each flag must be placed at the exact right angle, the exact right height. One flag tilts slightly, and Hugh removes it, crushing it, demanding another. You work in silence. The only sounds the gentle tap of Hugh placing elements and his occasional grunt of approval or disapproval. The castle is taking shape, becoming genuinely impressive. It's still ridiculous, a building made of almond paste that someone will eventually eat, but you can't deny the skill involved. And then disaster strikes. Not from you, mercifully. One of the other servants, a boy named Peter, who's been helping with another decorative element, bumps the table. It's a tiny bump, barely noticeable, but it's enough. The marchpane castle, still delicate and not fully set, wobbles. One tower leans. A wall cracks. 3 of your carefully made flags fall off. Time seems to stop. Hugh stares at the damaged castle, his face going through a progression of emotions. Disbelief, rage, and then something colder and more frightening: calculation. Who touched the table? Peter is frozen, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. He knows he's doomed, but he can't seem to make his mouth work to confess. Who touched the table? Hugh's voice rises to a roar that echoes through the kitchen. Everyone stops working. All eyes turn to witness what's about to happen. Peter finally finds his voice, or what's left of it. I did, sir. I didn't mean. Didn't mean? Hugh's voice drops back to a deadly calm. You didn't mean to destroy hours of work? You didn't mean to ruin the centerpiece of the feast? You didn't mean to humiliate me, and this kitchen, and the king himself in front of the duke? Sir, I can help fix. You can't fix anything. You can't do anything right. You're worse than uselessly destructive. Hugh turns to one of the senior servants. Get the master of discipline. This one needs correction. The master of discipline. You've heard whispers about this position but haven't encountered it directly. It's apparently someone not quite a guard, not quite a servant whose job is to administer punishment when kitchen workers step out of line. And from the way everyone's reacting, this isn't a slap on the wrist. The master of discipline arrives within minutes. A large man with arms like tree trunks and an expression that suggests he enjoys his job far too much. He listens to Hugh's explanation, nods, and grabs Peter by the arm. The stocks, the master of discipline says. 2 hours. Public display. The stocks. You know what these are? Wooden restraints that hold someone's head and hands in place, displayed publicly for humiliation and sometimes physical punishment. Peter is dragged away, protesting, crying, begging for mercy. No one helps him. No one even looks sympathetic. This is justice, medieval kitchen style. But Hugh isn't done. He turns to the head cook, who's been watching this unfold. The boy's punishment is his own, but this kitchen needs to understand the consequences of failure. I recommend docking wages for everyone involved in the feast preparations. Everyone. That includes you. For Peter's mistake, you'll all pay. The head cook considers this, and you can see him doing calculations, balancing the need for discipline against the risk of losing servants to starvation or desertion. Half wages for this week, he decides, for all servants below journeyman rank. Let this be a lesson. Half wages. For some of the servants, this means their families don't eat. For you, it means whatever small amount you were supposedly earning just got cut in half. For a mistake you didn't make, working on a project you had no control over. The kitchen returns to work, but the mood has shifted. Fear has settled over everything like a blanket. Everyone is hyper-aware of their movements, triple-checking their work, terrified of being the next Peter. You help Hugh repair the castle, replacing the fallen flags, stabilizing the cracked wall. He works with manic intensity now, paranoid about any further damage. You hand him elements without speaking, moving carefully, breathing shallowly, trying to be invisible. The castle is repaired by early afternoon, looking even better than before. Hugh stands back, examining it from every angle, looking for flaws that aren't there. Finally, satisfied, He has it carefully transported to the presentation room where it will be displayed before being served. But the day's punishments aren't over. During the afternoon preparations, one of the sauce cooks makes an error, oversalts a wine reduction that's meant for the venison. Not dramatically oversalted, just slightly too much. The master cook tastes it, makes a face, and the consequences are immediate. You've ruined a gallon of sauce, a gallon of wine, reduced for hours, seasoned with expensive spices, now useless. The master cook's voice is controlled, but there's anger underneath. What do you suggest we do about this? The sauce cook, a man who's been in the kitchen for years, knows there's no good answer. I can try to dilute it, sir. Add more wine. There's no time to reduce more wine. The feast is in 3 hours. The master cook thinks for a moment. You'll take 5 lashes, and you'll prepare tomorrow's sauces on your own time, after your regular duties. 5 lashes. With what? You wonder? Your question is answered when the master of discipline returns, this time carrying a leather strap about 2 feet long. The sauce cook is bent over a table, his tunic pulled up, and the strap comes down across his back. Crack. 1. The sound echoes through the kitchen. Crack. 2. The sauce cook flinches but doesn't cry out. Crack. 3. A red welt is visible now. Crack. 4. The sauce cook's hands grip the table edge, knuckles white. Crack. 5. It's over. The sauce cook straightens, pulls down his tunic, and returns to work without a word. His face is composed, but you can see the pain in the set of his shoulders, the careful way he moves. 5 lashes for oversalting a sauce. That's the price of imperfection. The feast preparations continue under this cloud of fear and pain. Every servant is on edge. Every cook double-checking everything. Everyone terrified of making the mistake that will bring punishment down on their head. You're assigned to help plate the first coursey delicate task that involves arranging sliced meats and vegetables in aesthetically pleasing patterns. The journeyman cook supervising you is sweating, not from the heat but from stress. He adjusts each slice multiple times, seeking perfect symmetry, perfect balance. Not like that. He snaps when you place a slice of duck slightly off-center. Everything must be perfect. Perfect. Do you understand? You adjust the slice. He examines it, still not satisfied, adjusts it himself by a fraction of an inch. Then he second-guesses himself and moves it back. Then moves it again. He's paralyzed by the demand for perfection, unable to commit to any arrangement because none of them are quite right. Finally, the head cook walks by, glances at the plate, and nods. It's fine. Move on to the next one. The journeyman cook nearly collapses with relief. Fine is a passing grade. Fine means no punishment. The feast begins at sunset. The dishes are carried out in procession. A parade of culinary achievement that represents hundreds of hours of labor and an ocean of stress. You watch from the kitchen as platter after platter disappears into the dining hall. The roasted swan, the venison with wine sauce, Hugh's marchpane castle, fish pies, honeyed fruits, breads of every variety. And then you wait, waiting to hear if something went wrong, if some dish was imperfect, if someone's going to be punished. The kitchen is silent except for the fires and the sound of nervous breathing. After what feels like hours, word comes back from the hall. The feast is a success. The Duke is pleased. The King is pleased. The food was excellent. The relief is palpable, a physical release of tension that sweeps through the kitchen. People slump against tables. Some laugh nervously. Others look close to tears. You've all survived. The collective punishment has been avoided. But Peter is still in the stocks. The sauce cook still has welts on his back. Everyone's wages are still docked. The success doesn't erase the punishments, it just means there won't be additional ones. That night, after the kitchen is finally clean and the last dishes are put away, you see Peter return from the stocks. His face is red from crying and from the sun exposure. His neck and wrists are raw from the wooden restraints. He's been there for hours, displayed publicly, subjected to whatever mockery or abuse passersby felt like dishing out. No one speaks to him. No one offers sympathy. He made a mistake. He was punished. And now he's back. That's how it works. You lie on your straw pile that night, thinking about the day's lessons. You've learned that perfection isn't just expected, it's demanded under threat of physical punishment. You've learned that mistakes, even minor ones, even ones that don't ultimately matter, are treated as grave offenses worthy of lashing and public humiliation. You've learned that the kitchen operates under a system of fear, where the threat of punishment is as much a tool as any knife or fire. And you've learned that even when you do everything right, even when the feast succeeds and everyone is pleased, you can still be punished for someone else's failures. Collective punishment ensures that everyone is watching everyone else, that the servants police themselves, that fear flows in all directions. This is the medieval court kitchen, a place where excellence is mandatory, failure is unforgivable, and punishment is creative, public, and designed to ensure you never, ever make the same mistake twice. If you survive to make a second mistake at all, you've survived 3 weeks. 3 entire weeks of burns, cuts, near poisonings, and the constant threat of punishment for mistakes you haven't even made yet. You're starting to think you've seen everything this kitchen can throw at you. You're starting to believe you might actually survive this job long enough to get promoted to something marginally less deadly. And then feast day arrives. Not just any feast day, the real thing. A full royal banquet for 300 guests, celebrating some political alliance you don't understand and don't care about. What you do care about is the fact that your 12-hour shifts are about to become something much, much worse. The preparation begins 3 days before the actual feast. 3 days of escalating chaos, mounting stress, and working hours that would make a modern labor inspector weep. You're about to learn that everything you've experienced so far was just training for this, the true test of whether a human body can be pushed past its breaking point and still somehow produce perfect roasted swan. Day 1 of preparation starts at 2 a.m. instead of the usual 3 a.m. You're jolted awake by someone literally kicking your straw pile, and you stumble into the kitchen in complete darkness. So exhausted you're not entirely sure you're not still asleep and this is just a nightmare. The head cook is already there, looking like he hasn't slept in a week, which he probably hasn't. He's surrounded by lists-long scrolls of parchment covered in writing that detail every single dish that needs to be prepared, every ingredient that needs to be sourced, every task that needs to be completed. Listen carefully. He announces to the assembled kitchen staff, his voice hoarse, "We have 3 days to prepare a feast for 300 nobles. The menu includes 47 different dishes across 6 courses. We will work in rotating shifts. No one sleeps more than 4 hours. No one takes breaks longer than 15 minutes. No one fails. Questions? No one has questions. Or rather, everyone has questions, But we all know better than to ask them. 47 dishes? 6 courses? For 300 people. The math alone is terrifying. You're immediately assigned to the provisioning team. Your job, along with a dozen other servants, is to source and transport all the ingredients needed for this monumental undertaking. And by source, I mean you're about to carry things. So many things. Such heavy things. The first task is collecting the meats. The castle's huntsmen have been working for weeks, and the results of their labor are stored in various outbuildings around the castle grounds. You're sent with a cart to collect 12 deer, 8 wild boars, 40 pheasants, 30 chickens, 20 rabbits, 6 swans, and a partridge in a pear tree. Not really that last one, but at this point it wouldn't surprise you. Each carcass has to be loaded onto the cart, transported to the kitchen, and hung in the cool storage rooms. The deer are the worst. Each one weighs well over 100 pounds, and they're awkward, unwieldy, and very, very dead. You and 3 other servants struggle to lift the first deer onto the cart, your muscles screaming, your back protesting in ways that can't be healthy. By the 3rd deer, you've developed a technique that's slightly less likely to give you a spinal injury. By the 6th deer, you're operating on pure stubbornness. By the 12th deer, you're fairly certain you've permanently damaged something important in your lower back. But there's no time to worry about that because now you have to load the boars. Wild boars are heavy, bristly, and still have their tusks attached. Loading them requires careful coordination to avoid impaling yourself on a dead pig's face. You manage to get all 8 boars loaded without anyone losing an eye, which feels like a genuine achievement. The birds are easier individually but exhausting collectively. 40 pheasants, 30 chickens, 6 swans. Each one needs to be counted, checked for damage, and properly stored. The swans are particularly troublesome because they're meant to be served with their feathers still attached. They'll be removed for cooking, then replaced for presentation, which means the plumage needs to be carefully preserved. You spend an hour gently arranging swan feathers, which is a surreal experience when you're already sleep-deprived and wondering if this is real life. The first day continues with grain collection. Hundreds of pounds of flour need to be brought from the stores. You carry sacks that weigh as much as you do, making trip after trip from the granary to the kitchen. Your shoulders develop new and creative types of pain. Your hands, gripping the rough fabric of the sacks, develop blisters on top of your existing blisters. You're achieving layers of injury you didn't know were possible. Then comes the vegetable collection. Remember those root vegetables you sorted through weeks ago? Well, now you need all of them. Every turnip, every onion, every carrot, every parsnip in the castle stores. You haul baskets and crates, sorting through them as you go, pulling out anything that's rotted since the last inspection. Somewhere around hour 14 of your shift, you realize you haven't eaten. There's been no time for food, no break long enough to sit down and consume anything. Someone tosses you a piece of bread as you pass, and you eat it while carrying a basket of onions, crumbs falling onto the vegetables you're transporting. This is your life now, eating while working, sleeping while walking, existing in a state of perpetual motion and exhaustion. The first day finally ends at midnight, a mere 22-hour shift. You collapse onto your straw pile and immediately fall into unconsciousness, only to be kicked awake what feels like minutes later but is actually 4 hours. Day 2 begins. Day 2 is butchering day. All those carcasses you collected yesterday need to be broken down into usable cuts. The butchering room becomes an abattoir, a scene from some medieval painting of hell. Blood runs in rivulets across the floor, pooling in the low spots, creating a slick, dangerous surface. The smell is overwhelming: raw meat, blood, viscera, and the underlying musk of wild animals. You're assigned to the deer station. Your job is to assist the master butcher, which means holding carcasses steady while he cuts them apart with tools that are barely controlled weapons. The butchering knife he uses is 2 feet long, heavy enough that each swing has real force behind it. When he separates joints, the sound of blade hitting bone echoes through the room like a drumbeat. Hold the haunch steady, he commands, and you grip the deer's leg with both hands while he cuts through the joint connecting it to the body. The knife goes through flesh and sinew, then hits bone and requires force. He leans into it, using his body weight, and the joint separates with a wet crack. Blood sprays across your tunic. You're beyond caring. This continues for hours. Deer after deer is reduced to component parts. Haunches for roasting, ribs for braising, organs for various dishes. The nobles have exotic tastes. Bones for stock. Nothing is wasted. Every part has a purpose, even if that purpose is food for the dogs. The boars are next, and they're even more challenging. Boar meat is tougher than venison, and the fat layer requires careful removal. The master butcher demonstrates the technique for separating the skin from the fat, a delicate process that involves sliding the knife along a membrane, cutting through it without cutting through the skin, which will be used for something you don't ask what. Your hands are covered in blood up to your elbows. Your clothes are soaked with it. The floor is slippery enough that you have to shuffle carefully to avoid falling. One of the other servants does fall, landing hard in a pool of blood and offal, and everyone just steps over him while he struggles to stand on the slick surface. Somewhere during the third bore, you achieve a state of dissociation. Your body continues working, holding carcasses, moving cuts to their designated areas, carrying away offal, but your mind has retreated to somewhere safer. You're watching yourself from a distance, this blood-soaked figure in a hellscape of meat and violence, and you're wondering how this is your life. By midday, the large animals are done. Now come the birds, 40 pheasants that need to be plucked, gutted, and prepped. Plucking is its own special torment. Each bird has hundreds of feathers, each one attached firmly enough that removal requires real effort. You pull feathers until your fingers cramp, until your arms ache, until feathers fill the air like snow and get into your mouth, nose, and eyes. The swans are reserved for the master cooks. They're too valuable to risk letting lower servants handle them. You watch from the plucking station as the swans are carefully skinned, the skin and feathers removed as a single unit to be preserved for the final presentation. It's delicate work, almost surgical, and you're grateful you don't have to do it because you're fairly certain your exhausted hands would destroy a swan's skin within seconds. Day 2 ends after another 20-hour shift. You get 4 hours of sleep that feel like 4 minutes. Day 3 begins. Day 3 is cooking day. Actual cooking day. Everything that's been gathered and butchered now needs to be transformed into the 47 dishes on the menu. The kitchen operates at a fever pitch, every station working simultaneously, the noise and heat and smoke reaching levels you didn't think possible. You're assigned to the roasting station, which means you're back to spit duty, but this time it's every spit in the kitchen running at once. There are 12 major spits, each one holding a different roast. Venison haunches, boar shoulders, whole pheasants arranged in rows. and you're part of a rotating team that ensures all the spits keep turning. All the meat cooks evenly. All the fires stay at the right temperature. You turn a spit for 45 minutes until your replacement arrives. Then you move to the next spit. Then the next. Then the next. It's a circuit of heat and pain and mechanical motion. Your hands develop new blisters where you didn't know skin existed. The constant heat leaves you in a state of perpetual near dehydration, sweating out more fluids than you can possibly replace. Between spit rotations, you're pulled to help with other tasks. Someone needs assistance lifting a cauldron of boiling stock, you provide the muscle. Barely, your arms trembling with the weight. Someone needs vegetables chopped, you chop until your hand cramps around the knife. Someone needs water carried, floors scrubbed, pots washed, and you do it all in a daze of exhaustion that makes everything feel dreamlike and unreal. The head cook is everywhere at once, tasting, adjusting, commanding. He's been awake for at least 60 hours straight, sustained by nothing but wine and sheer force of will. His eyes are bloodshot, his hands shake slightly, but his palate remains sharp. He tastes a sauce, determines it needs more pepper, and the undercook scrambles to adjust it. He samples a piece of roasted venison, declares it's cooking too fast, and the fire temperatures are immediately adjusted. The 6 courses are completed in sequence. The first course, elaborate subtleties and decorative pieces, including Hugh's rebuilt marchpane castle. He hasn't slept at all, standing guard over his creation. The second course, roasted birds in various preparations. Third course, the venison and boar roasts. Fourth course, fish dishes. You mercifully haven't been involved with these, as the fish station is its own nightmare. Fifth course, various pies and tarts. Sixth course, fruits, sweetmeats, and final decorative pieces. As each course is completed, it's moved to the presentation hall under heavy guard. These dishes represent not just food, but the kingdom's prestige. Every plate is a political statement. Every flavor is diplomacy on a dish. The feast begins at sunset on day 3. You've been awake and working for 18 hours on top of 3 days of brutal labor. You're operating on nothing but fear of failure and whatever primal survival instinct keeps humans moving when they should by all rights be unconscious. The first course goes out. You wait for word of any problems. None come. Second course. Still good. Third course. The reports from the dining hall are positive. The nobles are pleased. The food is excellent. Fourth course. Fifth course. Sixth course. And then, finally, it's over. The feast is complete. 300 nobles have been fed. 47 dishes have been served without incident. The kitchen has achieved the impossible. The head cook addresses the staff, his voice barely above a whisper from exhaustion. Well done. You've survived. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we do it all again because there are leftovers to manage and the kitchen doesn't clean itself. You stumble to your straw pile, barely capable of walking. Your body is a symphony of pain. Blistered hands, burned arms, strained back, cramped muscles, and an exhaustion so profound it feels like you're dying. You collapse, and before you even fully hit the straw, you're unconscious. You sleep for 6 horse of luxury and wake to the aftermath. The kitchen looks like a battlefield. Blood, grease, and food remnants cover every surface. Mountains of dirty dishes wait to be washed. The fires have burned down to coals that need to be cleaned out and rebuilt. But you've survived the feast. You've endured the marathon, the impossible schedule, the inhuman demands, and in doing so, you've learned the ultimate truth of the medieval court kitchen. It doesn't just want your labor. It wants everything. Every hour, every ounce of strength, every bit of focus you possess. It will push you past your limits, then push you further, and then expect you to show up tomorrow and do it again. Your worst day at any modern restaurant would be a vacation compared to this. And somehow, impossibly, you're still here, still standing, still surviving, still turning those cursed spits in your sleep. You've survived the feast barely, and you're starting to develop a dangerous sense of confidence. You can handle the heat, the knives, the impossible hours. You've eaten food that might have been poisoned and lived to tell the tale. You're a survivor, a veteran of the medieval kitchen trenches. But on your 23rd day, you're about to discover that the kitchen isn't just a workplace, it's a political battlefield where every pot of soup might be a weapon and every servant might be a spy. It starts innocently enough. You're assigned to morning water duty, the same tedious task you've done 100 times. But as you're hauling buckets from the well, you notice something odd. Two of the undercooks are having a whispered conversation in a corner, glancing around nervously. When they see you approaching, they immediately stop talking and move apart, suddenly very interested in their individual tasks. Suspicious, but maybe nothing. Except then you notice that one of them, the sauce undercook, a man named Gerard, slips something small into his apron pocket. Something wrapped in cloth, carefully concealed. You file this away in your mental catalog of things that are probably none of my business, and continue with your water hauling. But as the morning progresses, you notice more odd behavior, whispered conversations that stop when you approach, servants exchanging meaningful glances, an unusual tension in the air that has nothing to do with the usual kitchen stress. During the midday meal preparation, you're assigned to help Gerard with the sauces. He's making a wine reduction for the noble's table, and you're supposed to fetch ingredients as he needs them. Everything seems normal until he sends you to the spice room for pepper, and when you return, you notice he's added something to the sauce, something from that cloth-wrapped package in his pocket. Your blood runs cold. You remember Richard's poison training, the warnings about assassination attempts, the careful protocols designed to prevent exactly this kind of thing. Gerard has just added an unknown substance to food destined for the noble's table. You're faced with an impossible choice. If you report this and you're wrong, you've just accused an undercook of attempted murder based on nothing but suspicion. Gerard will have you beaten, fired, or worse. The kitchen hierarchy means his word against yours isn't even a contest you'll lose automatically. But if you don't report it and someone dies, you'll be complicit in assassination. You might hang. You watch Gerard finish the sauce, your heart pounding. He tastes it, nods with satisfaction, and sets it aside for service. He notices you staring. Something wrong? He asks, his tone casual but his eyes hard. No, sir. Just, what was that you added? I didn't recognize it. His expression doesn't change. A special ingredient, a family recipe, nothing that concerns you. It's a dismissal and a warning all at once. Stay out of this. Mind your business. But you can't. The sauce is going to the nobles. Whatever he added, whether it's harmless or deadly, you need to know. You wait until Gerard steps away. Then you do something incredibly stupid. You taste the sauce. Just a tiny amount on your finger, barely enough to detect flavor. Your tongue analyzes the taste desperately, trying to identify that unknown ingredient. You taste wine, reduced and concentrated. Pepper, definitely. Some kind of herb thyme, maybe. And underneath it all, something else. Something slightly bitter, slightly metallic. Your mind races through Richard's poison lessons. Bitter and metallic could be arsenic, but it could also be a dozen other things. Some poisonous, some harmless. You're not skilled enough to tell the difference. You need help. You find Richard in the tasting room, preparing for the afternoon service. You pull him aside, speaking in urgent whispers, explaining what you saw. He listens with an expression that grows increasingly grave. "Show me," he says. You lead him to the sauce station, but the sauce is gone, already sent to the serving area, ready to be plated. Richard curses under his breath. "We have to test it before it's served," he says. "But carefully. If Gerard notices us interfering with his sauce, there will be consequences. And if we're wrong about this, we'll both suffer." Richard moves with practiced casualness to the serving area, where the finished dishes are being assembled. He identifies the plates using Gerard's sauce, and with a subtle motion, he takes a small sample in a spoon. He tastes it, his face carefully neutral. Then he waits. You watch him, trying to read any sign of distress, any indication that he's feeling the effects of poison. Seconds tick by. A minute, 2 minutes. Richard remains still, monitoring his own body. Finally, he speaks, his voice quiet. "It's not poison. At least, not any poison I recognize. But there's definitely something unusual in this sauce. Something that shouldn't be there." Before you can respond, Gerard appears. He's noticed you and Richard examining his sauce, and his face is a mask of controlled fury. "Is there a problem with my sauce?" His voice is dangerous, too calm. Richard, to his credit, doesn't hesitate. "As the royal taster, I'm required to sample all dishes before they reach the noble table. I'm simply performing my duty. And, is my sauce acceptable? It's unusual. There's an ingredient I don't recognize." Gerard's eyes flicker to you, and you see the calculation there. He knows you reported this. He knows you're the one who noticed, and he's not going to forget it. "It's saffron," Gerard says smoothly. "Imported, expensive, and perhaps unfamiliar to those with less refined palates. I assure you, it's perfectly safe." Saffron. Could be saffron. That would explain the slight bitterness, the metallic notes. But would it explain the secrecy, the careful concealment? You're not sure. Richard nods slowly. "Very well. The sauce is approved for service." Gerard walks away, but not before giving you a look that promises retribution. You've made an enemy, and not just any Anemian undercook with power, connections, and a long memory. The rest of the day passes in tense anxiety. You keep expecting Gerard to exact revenge, to report you for insubordination, to arrange some accident involving you and a very hot pot. But nothing happens. The service goes smoothly. The nobles eat Gerard's sauce and survive. Maybe it really was just saffron. Maybe you overreacted. But that night, as you're cleaning up, one of the other servants, a girl named Alice, who sometimes works the vegetable station, pulls you aside. "That was brave," she whispers. "What you did with Gerard's sauce." "It was probably nothing. He said it was saffron." Alice shakes her head. "It wasn't saffron. I've seen real saffron. That wasn't the color." Your stomach drops. Then what was it? I don't know, but Gerard has been acting strange for weeks. Taking meetings with people who aren't kitchen staff. Receiving packages. And he's not the only one. She glances around nervously, then continues in an even lower whisper. There are factions in this kitchen. Loyalists to different noble houses. Some support the king. Some support other claimants to power. And they use the kitchen as their battlefield. Poison in the food, yes, but also information gathering, spying, sabotage. This is a revelation that recontextualizes everything you've experienced. The kitchen isn't just a kitchenette and intelligence network. A place where political alliances are formed and broken, where the fate of kingdoms might be decided by what goes into a sauce. Who can I trust? You ask. Alice's expression is grim. No one. Trust no one completely. Everyone has allegiances. Everyone has secrets. Even me. She walks away, leaving you with this unsettling knowledge. You're not just fighting fires and knives and exhaustion, you're caught in a web of intrigue that you don't understand and didn't ask to be part of. The next few days are a paranoid blur. You start noticing things you missed before. The way certain servants only speak to certain others. The way information flows through unofficial channels. The way some cooks have access to storage rooms they shouldn't, while others are mysteriously denied entry to areas they used to frequent. You see Edmund, the larder keeper, having a late-night conversation with a servant from the chamberlain's office, someone who has no business in the kitchen areas. You watch as packages are delivered to the kitchen through unusual routes, bypassing the normal provisioning channels. You observe the subtle signal servants give each author a particular gesture, a coded phrase, a meaningful glance, and you realize everyone is spying on everyone. The kitchen is a honeycomb of watchers and informants, each person gathering information for their patron, their faction, their cause. You're approached one evening by a senior journeyman cook you barely know. He pulls you into a quiet corner and speaks quickly. I know what you did with Gerard's sauce. That took guts. There are people who appreciate that kind of vigilance. People who could protect you, advance your position. Interested? This is a recruitment. Someone wants you to spy for them, to be their eyes and ears in the kitchen. Who? You ask. He smiles. Better you don't know names. Just know that we serve the true interests of the kingdom. We watch for threats, and we reward loyalty. And if I refuse? His smile doesn't waver. Then you continue as you are, unprotected, alone, vulnerable. It's not quite a threat, but it's not a threat either. You're being offered a choice. Join one of the factions and gain protection, or remain neutral and remain vulnerable. Before you can answer, another servant interrupts one you recognize as being friendly with Gerard. The journeyman cook immediately changes his demeanor, the recruitment conversation disappearing as if it never happened. You're left confused, frightened, and deeply uncertain. Every conversation might be a recruitment attempt or a loyalty test. Every task might be an opportunity to prove yourself to one faction or another. Every moment of kindness from a fellow servant might be genuine or might be manipulation. Historians still argue whether medieval court kitchens were truly hotbeds of political intrigue or whether later accounts exaggerated the danger for dramatic effect. The evidence suggests that, at minimum, kitchens were places where information flowed and influence could be exerted, even if outright espionage was less common than stories suggest. The paranoia affects your work. You second-guess every instruction, wondering if there's a hidden purpose. When you're told to deliver a message to another servant, you wonder if you're unknowingly participating in some scheme. When you're asked to fetch an ingredient from a locked storage room, you wonder what else might be in there, what secrets you're not supposed to see. One afternoon, you're sent to the wine cellar to retrieve specific bottles for the evening meal. The wine cellar is deep in the castle's foundation, a maze of cool, dark rooms where thousands of bottles are stored. You're given precise instructions. 3 bottles from a particular rack, marked with a specific seal. You find the rack, locate the bottles, but as you're reaching for them, you notice something odd. There's a small mark on the cork of one bottle, a mark that doesn't match the others. It's subtle, just a tiny scratch, but it's deliberate. Your paranoia flares. Is this a signal? A mark indicating this bottle has been tampered with? Or is it just normal wear and tear? Do you take this bottle as instructed, or do you substitute a different one? If you take the marked bottle and it's poisoned, you might be complicit in assassination. If you don't take it and it was supposed to be taken, you failed to follow instructions and someone will want to know why. You stand there in the dim cellar, holding the bottle, paralyzed by uncertainty. Finally, you make a decision. You take the marked bottle, but you also take note of which noble it's destined for. If something happens, at least you'll know what you were involved in. You return to the kitchen, deliver the bottles, and wait. The wine is served. The nobles drink. No one dies. No one even gets sick. Maybe the mark meant nothing. Maybe you're seeing conspiracies where none exist, driven mad by stress and paranoia. But that night, you overhear another conversation. 2 servants talking in the darkness. Unaware you're nearby, the marked bottle was identified. They know we're watching. Does Gerard know? Gerard knows everything. He's planning something for the boy who interfered with his sauce. They're talking about you. Gerard, whoever Gerard is really working for, is planning something. Revenge, punishment, or something worse. You lie awake that night, unable to sleep despite your exhaustion. The kitchen has revealed itself to be more than a workplace. It's a battlefield where the weapons are poison and information, where the casualties are anyone foolish enough to get involved in games they don't understand. You came here to work, to survive, to maybe earn enough to support yourself. Instead, you've stumbled into a world of political intrigue, factional warfare, and casual assassination attempts. The fires and knives and brutal labor are almost comforting compared to TSAT, at least those dangers are straightforward. But this is a maze where every path might lead to destruction, where every choice might be the wrong one, and where the only certain thing is that you can't trust anyone, not your fellow servants, not the cooks, not even the people who claim to want to protect you. Tomorrow, you'll return to the kitchen. You'll haul water and turn spits and chop vegetables. And you'll watch everyone around you, knowing that behind the mundane tasks of cooking, there's a hidden war being fought, and you're standing right in the middle of it. Welcome to the real medieval court kitchen, where the deadliest ingredient isn't poison, it's politics. You've been in the medieval royal court kitchen for a month now. 1 full month of surviving fires, knives, potential poisonings, brutal hierarchies, impossible standards, marathon work shifts, and political intrigue that could get you killed in ways you don't fully understand. You're a collection of scars, burns, and psychological trauma wrapped in a filthy tunic. You've learned to sleep standing up, eat while working, and identify 17 different types of dangerous mold by smell alone. And somehow, impossibly, you're still here. This morning, your 30th day, you wake up on your straw pile and something feels different. Not better, exactly, just different. Your body still aches, your hands are still a disaster, and you're still operating on a sleep deficit that would horrify any modern doctor. But there's a subtle shift in how you navigate the kitchen, how you anticipate tasks, how you read the room's energy. You've adapted. Your body has developed calluses in places you didn't know could callus. Your muscles have grown accustomed to loads that would have destroyed you a month ago. Your heat tolerance has increased to the point where standing next to a roaring fire feels merely uncomfortable rather than life-threatening. You've built up what medieval people would just call constitution, and what we might call the ability to survive absolute hell. More importantly, you've learned the systems. You know which cooks are safe to approach with questions and which ones will cuff you for breathing wrong. You know which storage rooms have the least rotten provisions and which ones are basically composting facilities pretending to be larders. You know the timing of the kitchen's rhythms, when to be visible and useful, when to be invisible and out of the way. You've even started to develop relationships, if you can call them that. There's Edmund in the larder, who occasionally gives you a nod of acknowledgement, high praise from a man of few words and fewer emotions. There's Margaret, the undercook who's been blacklisted from advancement, who sometimes shares warnings about which nobles are in foul moods and likely to reject perfectly good food. There's Richard, the royal taster, who's started to treat you less like disposable backup and more like a marginally competent apprentice. But today, as you enter the kitchen for the pre-dawn shift, you notice something that makes your newfound confidence evaporate instantly. There's a new face, a young boy, maybe 12 years old, wide-eyed and terrified, standing exactly where you stood a month ago. He's your replacement, or rather, he's the next person at the bottom of the hierarchy, which means you're moving up. Barely, incrementally, but up nonetheless. The head cook notices you looking at the boy and actually addresses you directly, which happens so rarely it's genuinely startling. You'll train him, show him the basics, try not to get him killed on his first day. You stare at the boy, his name is Thomas. You learn, because of course it is. There are approximately 70 Thomases working in this castle, and you realize you have to teach him everything you've learned, which means confronting exactly how insane this job is. Right? You say, trying to sound authoritative and probably failing. First rule: everything here can kill you. The fires, the knives, the food, the people. Second rule: you never, ever complain. Third rule: when someone tells you to do something, you do it immediately, correctly, and without questions. Understand? Thomas nods, his eyes somehow getting even wider. He doesn't understand. He can't possibly understand. But he will, probably by the end of the day, definitely by the end of the week. You walk him through the morning routine. Stoking fires, watch your eyebrows. Hauling water, bend with your knees, not your back, which you learned the painful way. Basic knife safety, keep all your fingers, if possible. He's clumsy, slow, terrified. You were too, a month ago. Hell, you still are. You've just learned to hide it better. Watching Thomas struggle with tasks that have become second nature to you is surreal. When he fumbles with a bucket, spilling water, you automatically show him the proper grip, the one that distributes weight evenly, reduces spillage, and minimizes the chance of the bucket's handle tearing through your already destroyed palms. When he recoils from the heat of the fire, you demonstrate the approach angle that exposes you to the least direct heat while still allowing access to the cooking surface. You're teaching him survival techniques you didn't even realize you developed. Adaptive strategies that your body learned through trial and error, most of the trials being errors. How to turn a spit using your whole body rather than just your wrist. Distributing the strain. How to recognize when a cook is in a mood where even perfect work will be criticized. And how to stay invisible during those times. How to eat scraps without getting caught. How to steal moments of rest without being noticed. Mid-morning, the head cook announces that the king is hosting a small, intimate dinner tonight, only 50 guests. After the 300-person feast, this sounds almost relaxing. Almost. Thomas looks at you with hope in his eyes, like maybe this job won't be so bad. Don't. You warn him. Never assume anything will be easy. That's when you make mistakes. Sure enough, the intimate dinner requires a level of precision that the massive feast didn't. With fewer guests, every dish is more visible, more scrutinized. There's no hiding behind quantity. Quality is everything. You're assigned to help prepare the centerpiece. A roasted peacock that will be served with its feathers intact, tail fanned out in full display. This is the kind of elaborate presentation that requires hours of careful work and can be ruined in seconds by one clumsy movement. The peacock has been carefully skinned, the skin and feathers preserved as a single unit. The meat has been roasted separately, seasoned with spices that cost more than Thomas's family probably earns in a year. Now comes the reassembly. The roasted meat is mounted on a frame, and the feathered skin is carefully positioned over it, creating the illusion that the bird is still alive, just cooked. You're holding the frame steady while the master cook positions the feathered skin. Your hands must remain absolutely still. Even a tremor could shift the frame, ruining the presentation. Thomas is nearby, watching with fascination and horror. The master cook works with practiced precision, adjusting each feather, ensuring the tail fans properly, creating a display that's equal parts culinary achievement and taxidermy nightmare. It takes 30 minutes of absolute concentration. Your arms are screaming from holding the position, but you don't move. You've learned this much. Pain is temporary, but ruining a peacock presentation gets you beaten. Finally, it's complete. The peacock stands in artificial glory, its feathers brilliant, its glassy eyes somehow both dead and lifelike. It's grotesque and magnificent, a perfect encapsulation of medieval noble taste. Good. The master cook says actual praise, a word you've heard maybe 3 times total. Don't touch it. Don't breathe on it. Don't even look at it wrong. This peacock is worth more than both of you combined. You and Thomas back away carefully, treating the peacock like the valuable, fragile absurdity it is. The rest of the day proceeds with the controlled chaos you've come to expect. You work through your assigned tasks, keeping Thomas close, showing him the ropes that you learned by nearly hanging yourself on them. You watch him make the same mistakes you made: wrong grip on the knife, too close to the fire, too slow with a response to a cook's command. Each mistake earns him the same consequences you received. Sharp words, the occasional cuff to the head, the constant reminder that he's worthless and replaceable. But you also see him start to adapt, just like you did. By evening, he's moving slightly faster, anticipating needs slightly better, flinching slightly less when someone yells. He's learning that survival here isn't about excellence, it's about acceptable incompetence delivered with maximum effort. The intimate dinner goes off without incident. The peacock is presented to ooze and os from the nobles, who will then eat it and probably not even notice the taste because they're too busy being impressed by the feathers. The other dishes are well received. No one dies from poison. Richard tested everything and survived, which is always a good sign. As the kitchen winds down for the night, winds down, meaning only 12 hours of work instead of 18, you find yourself standing next to Thomas at the pot washing station. His hands are already raw from the cold water and abrasive sand, just like yours were, just like yours still are. Does it get better? He asks quietly, scrubbing at a pot that's crusted with burned-on food. You consider lying. You consider offering false hope. Some reassurance that yes, it gets easier. You'll adapt. It'll be fine. But you remember how the lies, even well-intentioned ones, only made the reality harder when it hit. No, you tell him honestly. It doesn't get better. You just get better at surviving it. The work is still brutal. The hours are still impossible. The danger is still real. But you learn tricks. You build calluses, physical and mental. And eventually, you stop being the newest person here, and someone else takes your place at the bottom. Thomas absorbs this, his young face trying to process a future that's just endless versions of today. Why do you stay? He asks. It's a good question. Why do you stay? The pay is essentially non-existent. The conditions are medieval literally. The risk of death or serious injury is constant. The stress is unrelenting. There are other jobs, other places, other ways to survive. But you realize the answer isn't rational. You stay because leaving would mean admitting defeat. You stay because you've invested so much pain and effort that quitting would make it all meaningless. You stay because despite everything, there's a perverse pride in surviving what breaks others. You stay because the alternative, facing the world outside with no prospects, no references, and a body that's been used up by this kitchen, might actually be worse. Because I haven't died yet, you finally say. And as long as I'm alive, I might as well keep going. It's not inspirational. It's not uplifting. It's just the truth. That night, you lie on your straw, pile your straw, in your spot, which you've somehow claimed through sheer persistence, and you think about the modern world. The world where kitchens have ventilation systems and safety standards. Where work weeks are 40 hours, not 100. Where dropping a dish doesn't result in public flogging. Where you can quit a job without facing starvation. You think about modern restaurant workers complaining about difficult shifts, demanding managers, hot kitchens. You think about how those complaints would sound to Thomas, or to yourself a month ago, or to any of the broken, scarred people who populate this medieval kitchen. There's no judgment in this thought, no superiority, just a deep, bone-weary acknowledgement that perspective is everything. Your worst day at Applebee's, your most stressful shift at a modern restaurant, your most demanding culinary school exam, none of it would even register as difficult to someone who's survived what you've survived. The burns that sent you to the hospital in the modern world, here they're barely worth wrapping. The 12-hour shift that exhausted you, here it's called getting off early. The demanding chef who yelled at you, here that's called a gentle reminder. The workplace injury that would trigger an investigation, here it's called Tuesday. You've survived a month in conditions that would make a modern health inspector weep, a labor lawyer rage, and a safety officer resign on the spot. You've worked hours that violate every employment law that will be invented in the next several centuries. You've endured abuses that would shut down any modern establishment instantly. And the truly horrifying part? This is normal. This is just how it is. This is the baseline standard for thousands of kitchen workers across medieval Europe, all of them surviving similar conditions, all of them carrying similar scars, all of them trapped in the same system of brutal hierarchy and impossible demands. But you've also learned something valuable, something that the modern world sometimes forgets. Humans are astoundingly resilient. You can adapt to almost anything, survive almost anything, endure almost anything. Not without cost. The cost is written on your body and mind in permanent markers, but you can do it. You close your eyes, your body cataloging its various pains as you drift toward sleep. Burned forearm from this morning's bread of an incident. Blistered palms from rope work. Cut thumb from the afternoon's vegetable prep when your knife slipped. Bruised hip from when someone shoved you aside and you hit the table corner. Lower back pain from lifting grain sacks. Shoulders aching from turning spits. Lungs slightly burning from constant smoke inhalation. This is your body now. This is your life now. A collection of injuries and near misses, strung together by the thin thread of survival, wrapped in the smoke and heat of a medieval kitchen. And tomorrow, you'll wake up and do it all again. Because that's what you do. That's what everyone here does. You survive. You adapt. You endure. The kitchen will continue without you, just as it continued before you arrived. New servants will come. Some will survive. Others won't. The fires will keep burning. The spits will keep turning. The nobles will keep eating their elaborate meals, completely unaware of the human cost behind each dish. But you'll carry this experience with you forever. The knowledge of what you survived, what you endured, what you learned about yourself and about human resilience. And whenever you face difficulty in whatever comes next, whenever a challenge seems insurmountable, whenever a situation seems unbearably, you'll remember the medieval kitchen. You'll remember that you survived conditions that would break most people. You'll remember that you adapted to hell and found ways to function within it. You'll remember that you're stronger, more resilient, more capable than you ever imagined. And you'll remember to appreciate the small things: running water, safety equipment, labor laws, the ability to quit a job without facing destitution, modern medicine, ventilation systems, standardized measurements, refrigeration, and the basic human dignity that modern workplaces are supposed to provide. So the next time you're having a hard day at work, take a moment to be grateful. Grateful that you're not turning a spit by hand for 4 hours straight. Grateful that you won't be beaten for oversalting a sauce. Grateful that your workplace probably won't literally kill you. And if it tries, there are laws and systems designed to prevent that. The medieval royal court kitchen was a special kind of hell, a crucible that tested human limits and often found them wanting. You survived it. You endured it. And now you know, with absolute certainty, that you can survive almost anything. Now let your eyes grow heavier. Let the tension ease from your shoulders. Let the medieval kitchen fade into history where it belongs. You're safe now, in a world with safety standards and labor laws and the basic recognition that workers are human beings deserving of dignity and care. Whatever challenges tomorrow brings, they're nothing compared to what you've already survived. Rest now. You've earned it. You've survived the unsurvivable, endured the unendurable, and lived to tell the tale.